All right, commissioners, I'd like to take just a preliminary roll call to make sure we're all here before we actually begin meeting proceedings. So let's make sure that we have Commissioner Munoz.
Present.
Excellent. I know we have Commissioner, Vice Chair Manley, I should say. I saw you, right, Jason? Okay. And I know I saw Jerry Powell. I'm pretty sure I'm here, and we have Commissioner Bernier, so that's good. All right, then, let's get this started. I'd like to say good evening to everybody. My name is Darren Exarian. I'm the chairman of the La Habra City Planning Commission, and we welcome you to the Planning Commission meeting, which was continued from last night, and welcome back to all previous visitors, so to speak. At this time, I'd like you to please come to order and join Commissioner Powell in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Hand over our hearts. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Will the secretary please call roll?
This is Commission Secretary Carmen. Commissioner Munoz.
Present.
Vice Chair Manley.
Here.
Commissioner Powell.
Here.
Commissioner Bernier.
Here.
Chair Nazarian.
Here.
All are present. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. We will now reconvene the public hearing on the Rancho La Habra project. As a reminder, the item on the agenda is consideration of number 1, General Plan Amendment 18-01 to change the land use designation from open space to low density residential, that's 0 to 8 units per acre for planning areas 2, 3, and 4, and mixed use 1 for planning area 5 of the Rancho La Habra specific plan. 2, Environmental Impact Report 18-01, and that's SCH numbers 2015-111-045. 3, Amendment number 3 to the La Habra Hills specific plan. 4, Zone Change 1801 to change the land use designation from La Habra Hills specific plan to Rancho La Habra specific plan for the area occupied by Westridge Golf Course. 5, Adoption of the Rancho La Habra specific plan. 6, Vesting tentative track map 17845. 7, Design Review 18-01 through 18-05 for Rancho La Habra specific plan areas 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7. And finally, Development Agreement 18-01. So tonight, the meeting will be conducted in the following manner. The continued public hearing will be reopened at the point where we left off when we finished last night. Those that were in the queue, and by that I mean those who raised their hand and were recorded as having done so, will be given the opportunity to speak tonight. However, no additional speakers will be taken tonight, as the commission will have taken 3 consecutive days of public testimony in support and opposition to the proposed project, and has appropriately provided the opportunity for the public to comment on the project. And I'll now allow the city attorney to provide additional insight into this matter at this time.
Hi, Chair Nazarian, Andrew Ho, Director of Community Development. At this time, I'd like to introduce Special Counsel Sarita Young from Richards Watson Gershon and Janetta Giovinco from Richards Watson Gershon, who will be providing counsel to the commission tonight, and I'll hand it over to Sarita at this time.
Hi, Sarita.
Thank you, Mr. Ho. Thank you, Chair. Yes, just as a reminder, the commission has not imposed any time limits on speakers thus far, has continued to welcome all public input, and has provided the public with an opportunity to provide comments to the commission to adequately deliberate on this matter. And so after eight or more hours of public testimony, it is a reasonable meeting management measure of the chair to limit further testimony to those who indicated their desire to speak during yesterday's meeting, but could not do so because of time constraints. So as a reminder for members of the public, the commission's role in this project is to make a recommendation to the City Council. The City Council will hold its own public hearing on the matter, so the general public will have another opportunity to provide comments in support and in opposition at the City Council meeting.
Very good, Sarita. Thank you very much for that clarification. We appreciate that. I'll add that no time limit once again is placed on individual comments tonight. However, it is requested that you limit your comments to new information. And of course, anyone who becomes abusive or displays any inappropriate public behavior will be removed from the commentary. Pursuant to established rules, there will be a 10:30 p.m. curfew. And in that very unlikely event, any business not completed by that time will be continued to the next commission meeting. If an additional meeting does become necessary, the commission intends to continue the meeting to the next available meeting time and will utilize the same Zoom access numbers. Commission will take health breaks at the chair's discretion, and when we do that, we'll recess for a very short period and then reconvene. Following public testimony, the staff will summarize any correspondence received since 5:00 p.m. today for the record. Then the applicant will have an opportunity for rebuttal, after which we will then close the public hearing. Following the close of the public hearing, the commission will enter into deliberations and therefore provide direction to staff accordingly. So now is the time to hear from our last group of speakers. And I've been asked to read the list as was recorded last night. So all the folks who are on the list can prepare, get ready to speak. The order is number 1, Shaven Brown, number 2, Robert Roman, number 3, number 714-447-1735, number 4, call-in user 2, number 5, Tyler L, number 6, Greg's Laptop, number 7, DQ, number 8, Marie Laviaga, number 9, Yes on X, number 10, Lena Adamo, number 11, LH, number 12, Yes on X, number 13, Benjamin F, number 14, Diane D, number 15, 714-468-4140, and number 16 is Alex. All right, very good. So Veronica, you're with us, correct?
Yes, I am.
And whenever you're ready, if you'd be so kind as to connect us to the first caller.
Okay, give me a minute to search for Siobhan Brown, please.
Of course, thank you.
Siobhan Brown, if you are logged in, can you please raise your hand? Okay, seeing there is no one by that name logged in. Go to number 2, Robert Roman. If you're logged in, can you raise your hand, please? Okay, we will move on to number 3. It's a phone number 714-447-1735. If you're logged in, can you please raise your hand? If you're calling in via phone, press *9. Okay, moving on to number 4, call-in user number 2. If you are logged in, can you please raise your hand? Okay, moving on to number 5, Tyler L. I am unmuting you. Please unmute yourself on your end to address the commission. If you're using a phone, press *6. Please spell your first and last name and where you are from before addressing the commission.
Go ahead, speaker.
I am attempting to start my video, but it says the host has stopped my video. Are you able to hear me?
Well, we can hear you perfectly, so that's the most important thing.
All right, let's see.
There you go.
How about now? Can you see me?
Perfect.
Excellent.
Perfect. Yes. Yes.
Thank you. All right, Chairman Nazarian and Commissioners, my name is C.J. Lees. That's L-E-E-S. I'm the Chief Development Officer of the Westridge Community Association and a volunteer for our Political Action Committee, Save La Habra. My involvement of this goes way back many years when I came to, because of the industry I work in, help my parents and some of their neighbors work on an issue that concerned a lot of people in the city at the time. They were, my role at the time, just so you kind of understand my background, as you asked Mr. Faust and others, I'm the former head of development, essentially the strategic planning group for the Walt Disney Company, the Disneyland properties, and then later with Imagineering, research and development, global development. And so in my professional opinion, I feel like the handling, and we did a lot of development deals at Disney before a lot of city councils and a lot of states and internationally. I feel that what's happened here to the people of La Habra, and particularly with the dealings of Lenore and those people, as well as some of the process issues that we'll get into in a few minutes, have been, as we'll say, just misleading, deceptive, at least on Lenore's part, as I've seen in 10 years. This is a very bad process for these residents, and so that's part of the reason that I've volunteered my time. Unlike a lot of the hired guns you heard who lived in Irvine and all these other places. I mean, my folks actually live in Westridge. I live right across Beach Boulevard from that, and so I'm here to help. And just like everybody at Save La Habra, I volunteered my time and try to help the residents organize their voice. What I figured out very quickly is, and I think you all have figured out through this process, is these are pretty remarkable folks. I mean, these are folks that didn't really need a lot of help organizing their voice. They express their thoughts extremely well. They're sophisticated. They're very vested in this community. We heard 50-year residents, 60-year residents, right, that have been part of this. You've heard from people who live here, who have kids who go to school here, even people who shop here, who say, if this thing happens and the traffic and this and that, I'm not going to shop here anymore. I mean, so I think there's all sorts of sort of constituencies that you all are considering, of course, because, you do very difficult work, and, I have the utmost respect for the work that you all do and the work the City Council does. One of the things that we did do here is we let the residents speak for themselves, but I have helped them, and we've helped them together with some professionals, obviously attorneys and so forth. They're not volunteers, but to put together an initiative. And I think you're all probably aware of Measure X, which is on the ballot. And these good residents, many of whom have called in here, are poised to vote on that issue in just a couple of weeks. I mean, the ballots come out at the beginning of October. The mail ballots will come out at the beginning of October, and the City Council, guided by this developer and sort of the pressure they've been seeing, the city's going to have a vote and a process on this at a time when you're weeks away from the citizenry, from the very voters you all represent, expressing their direct voice on this matter of open space that would affect this parcel, that would affect exactly what you all are purporting to do here tonight. So, I've talked to a lot of land use attorneys, I've talked to a lot of friends in the industry. I said, you ever seen this in another city? Have you ever seen where there's something on the ballot and a city council? I mean, it could actually be the case that, the initiative wins in between readings, between the first and second reading. And this is a pretty sort of egregious situation here. So anyhow, we're concerned about it. I think you've heard some of the frustration from the community members. I think what happened last night sort of adds to that frustration a bit. Given the public hearing was not closed, public hearing, there was no motion, there was no vote on the public hearing. It's unfortunate the city would prevent additional speakers from participating tonight. Came back from break last night, prospectively closed the meeting based on the folks that were in queue. I think we all know that there were tens and tens, probably 50 plus speakers that have spoken. And at any one time during this meeting, there were no more than 5 or 10 hands up at any time. Right? I mean, maybe 15 hands at one point, but there were never 50 hands or 100 hands. It was never, people kind of came in and out of the call as we would expect. The city chose this forum. The county, clearly the county has changed its status on the state's list. So pursuant to the governor's executive order, you could have had an in-person option for these folks, but you chose not to do that. Don't know why, I don't know what the motivation was, but I assume, I'll take it at face value that it is that you noticed it this way and that's the way you went ahead with it. However, you know, given some of the things we're going to talk about Lenore and the deception and the opinion poll and all the stuff that's gone on here, these residents are definitely very hurt, very disenfranchised, and frankly, pretty mad. And there's some council seats that are on this, you know, on this election right next to Measure X. So, you know, I wouldn't be at all surprised if the citizenry takes their angst out at the ballot box. So, you know, my perspective for tonight is I'm going to try to go through for you. I'll try to take this from the perspective of what we've kind of recognized over a long period of time here with Lenore's pattern of conduct. You know, we think that the city's been a bit, at least staff has been a bit complicit in all that. And they have attempted to advantage, I believe, or at least advantage Lenore, disadvantage the people at many points along the process. And we feel that last night's capping of the speakers goes against, if not the letter, certainly the principle of the trust that we've built up with council members, the discussions we've had on and offline with those council members about how this hearing would have been conducted. So we feel this is a pretty big breach. In any event, so let me just end this by saying, kind of the preamble. I just want to end this by saying that I feel like you all do have an important job to do, and particularly, you know, Ms. Bernier, I mean, you all have been very brave about putting it to this developer. I mean, you have been asking tough questions. You know, Mr. Nazarian, you asked a lot of very good questions about that public opinion poll and how that was set up and how that was misleading. So I think you're on to sort of what we're on to, or sort of what I've seen as I've come into this as a third party. And, you know, so what we're dealing with here and who the city is dealing with here, I think is as relevant as anything else. So for the rest of my remarks, I'm going to talk about who are we dealing with in Lenore and what have they done to these residents? Well, have they been straightforward? Have they been straightforward with the city? Have they been straightforward with the residents? So let's start at where things started 5 years ago. It's all right. Let's actually go back to the 90s. They sold a plan to a very different council, but again, this city, you know, Anderson was on the council, Simonian was on the council, Simonian's running again. They sold a plan that was about building houses and building a buffer zone, which was a green belt. It was a buffer zone that was intended to maintain green space and keep the residents and the shopping district and certain traffic impacts separate. And that is what in fact happened. Now, that developer then sold homes to people in a golf community. Every piece of marketing material had golf on it. Every single street in the development is named for a golfer. It's very clear that you know, there may not have been a particular view guarantee or a particular whatever for the folks who lived in Westridge, but to have this is not a different developer. This is the very same developer come back to the table for another round of profits, for another round of houses to build, to take out the green belt that they promised the council and they promised the people, is a pretty outrageous claim. And the fact that the city would, you obviously have a duty to process an applicant's application, but the city is taking it as serious as it is. I mean, we feel this is a tough one. They also sold to these residents, they sold beautiful parks and communities. It's exactly the same spiel. The spiel you heard was the same spiel they heard in the 90s. And what did we hear from the residents? We heard lock trails that were so poorly planned they had to be locked all the time, graffiti, crime. They had a park that was set aside, I think, for some Indian artifacts. All the artifacts disappeared. The glass cases were smashed. There was no, I mean, just very poorly planned, poorly designed stuff. And the citizens, I mean, of course, they thought they were going to benefit from all this because that's what was advertised. But of course, that's not always how it works out with companies like Lenore. Shame on Lenore. And lastly, we heard from, you know, folks like Tom Blaine and others who said, you know, they told me zoning was never guaranteed, but, you know, I talked to the city and they said nothing, whatever. This is open space, and open space in the general. It's not even just in the specific plan, it's in the general plan. You don't have to worry about that at all, right? Of course, there's a contract that says, you know, no views are guaranteed. That's in every housing document. But if you really think about it, and you guys know this as well as anyone, I mean, zoning is among the most precious, highest obligations, highest promises that a council, that a city government, that a planning commission makes to its residents. Everybody relies on it every time they buy property, every time they transact business in the city. And to have this sort of change suddenly in this grand way for this developer who's done these things, who is, essentially coming back, reneging on its deal, selling you the same empty promises to try to get another round of profits. That's all plain and simple. $100 million. I don't know what the number is, but you heard Mr. Mr. Tan give it exactly. He gave you the equation. He said, and I know this from my corporate days. We do a model, and the model says, here's how much the development can support. That includes the affordable housing money. That includes all the parks. That includes all the givebacks, whatever. And at the end of all that, we have a profit margin we must maintain. And so they are back for their profit margin, and they will do whatever they can do within, some limits to seek out that profit margin. So yeah, let's start there. So that's where we came from. So that is 2000. That is the 90s. That brings us to they're back at the table again. So what did they do when they came back from?
Mr. Lees, are you there? Mr. Lees, we've lost your voice and signal. If you can hear us.
You can get some concessions. Yes, can you hear me?
Well, now we can. You broke up there. We lost you for about, 15, 20 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll ask you, I was going to interrupt anyhow. I'm going to ask you to the extent possible, and I've been asked to ask you this, if you would please try gently, if I may ask, to focus on the real parameters of the project itself. And I know we're talking about the business model of Lennar and all that, but that's a little extraneous to what we're actually looking at tonight. So I simply ask that we really kind of focus on the project itself, if that's okay.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so when the citizens got concerned and they came to the table, these are the people that we're dealing with. These are the people who are making the promises. There could be nothing more central to the promises being made than the character of the developer who's making them. So that's our take on it. When the citizens got concerned, Lennar came to the table and said, "This is a done deal. You don't have any choices here. We're going to ram this through the city. This is already done. You can choose to play ball and get whatever it is that you can get from us, whatever it is we're offering you, or you can just sit back and we'll do it without you." That's what they said. Then they came back to everybody. I think you've heard this. They talked about it in their own presentation. So clearly, obviously, fair game for comment. They said the golf course is failing. The golf course is closing. I think there was a letter they sent out to the whole community that said, the question of whether the golf course remains in existence is I'm paraphrasing here, but it's done. It's closed. The golf course never closed. And you've heard from golfers. The golf course is busy. I don't know how busy. We can't obviously see their financials, but the golf course is busy. And the golf course has been apparently increasing pricing, according to one of the insiders who was talking on, I learned that in this call. But really what kills a green space like this? What kills a golf course? Is it the declining value of the game of golf, the declining popularity of the game of golf? No, really what it is entitlements developers. It's entitlements developers. It's folks like Lennar who come back to the well to take out the very golf course they put in by offering a value for the land that isn't as entitled. As entitled is open space. It's worth one value as open space. It's worth a different value with all of the entitlements that you're considering tonight. That difference is just a handout to the developers, a handout that you're going to take off the backs of the citizens and give right to the developers. The golf course doesn't benefit the public, they say. Another misrepresentation. This is not a country club golf course. This is a green belt that has plenty of benefits all in and of itself as a buffer zone and a green belt. But it certainly has a benefit to those who want to golf. Anybody can walk up to that course and play. Yeah, they got to pay green fees. I've hit the driving range there. I use a coin-operated, machine. It's you can hit on the driving range for nothing. So, it's a little bit disingenuous to sort of make this sound like it's a it's some kind of private, country club. It's not. So we had a whole bunch of misrepresentations about that. Then we come into what can the citizens do about this? So the citizens are upset. The citizens come to the city. They try to work things out. Nothing gets worked out. Well, developer says there's nothing the citizens can do. And so we do something. We start an initiative process. And that is ballot measure X. That is the very ballot measure that you all are attempting to circumvent. Everyone on this call, except for maybe the shills from Irvine and Ontario, everybody else gets to vote on this in just a few weeks. Thankfully, Lenore doesn't get to vote. The citizens get to vote, and it's the power of the people in its most pure form. We took thousands of signatures to qualify this initiative. And what happened? What did this developer do? How misleading were they? They went to the city council and they said, if you put it on if you adopt this, we'll sue you and we'll cost you millions of dollars and we'll bankrupt the city. If you call a special election, we'll sue you. If you put it on the ballot, even for November 2020, we're suing you. You need to take this to the Superior Court and invalidate the initiative, or we're going to sue you. Now, of course, our council and many folks who looked at this said there's no validity to those claims. The city council, did sort of the most conservative thing they could do, and they put it on the ballot for November 2020. What happened? Did they sue? No. It was all bullying. All of it was bullying. And the same thing that they're doing here to you. You heard it in Mr. Tan's presentation. He told you that you had to do what he wanted. Otherwise, these bad things would happen to the city and its residents. They talked about NIMBYism. They talked about this is just like the Westridge, the first Westridge development. These people got their house. Everybody else should get these new houses. Well, as you all know, changing blight to a housing development is very different from coming back in and redeveloping a formerly promised greenbelt in an existing housing development that has so much of a tie to the community itself.
Mr. Lees, I'm sorry, just one real quick thing. I hate to interrupt. I apologize for that, but I just want to make note of the fact for the record that we are approaching about 20 minutes. I would say two things. I would ask you to try to, at this point forward, address the specifics of the project that you would like to share your opinion on, and also remind you gently that we do have a provision that would otherwise prevent what we call filibustering. So we can't spend an enormous amount of time on this particular thread. So I'd ask you to try to be as concise as you possibly can with our advanced gratitude.
So are you suggesting that me summarizing the position of Save La Habra is filibustering the commission?
No. I'm not suggesting you're even doing that. We're a simple request that you try to address the specifics with regard to this project. That's all I'm saying at this point.
I am happy to do that, and I am doing that. So what I'm trying to explain to you all is that the folks that are making these promises, the folks that are doing this work, have been misleading and dishonest with the public. They cannot.
We understand that, Mr. Lees. We've been told that many times. We definitely do understand that. As you've heard everybody talk over the last 8 hours, we do get that. So we get that point of view. So just to be clear, we understand.
No, I get it. But and did you interrupt Mr. Tan when he was talking about all of the many things that were untrue in his speech? You didn't interrupt him once. You've interrupted me 3 times. So let me continue. And if I think you'll find that this has a point.
Okay.
So let's talk about something specific. Let's talk about this is a Westridge problem. That's what they told you. They told you this is just about Westridge. It's not about the city. The city doesn't care about this, right? That's what they told you. That's not true. You saw it. You've seen it yourselves in these very calls. There are people from North La Habra who are concerned about this. In fact, one of the organizers who works every day on Save La Habra is from North La Habra, as far as you can get from the development, because people are concerned about the traffic. I'm not going to go into the traffic study. I'm not going to go into the 6,000 cars. I'm not going to go into that stuff. I won't do it because I understand it. We've heard it. I think Mr. Faust touched on it very well with his discussion about VMT versus LOS and how the EIR has defects in that way. I believe also, both the developer or the city, someone has been sort of disingenuous here with other cities. We've heard from other cities. Other cities have contacted our organization about the idea that traffic fixes should be done wherever they spill into the very neighboring communities. Well, what has been the developer's response, the city's response to those queries? It's that, well, this it's the exact opposite, talking out the other side of the mouth of the line that says, this is definitely going to happen. You don't have any choices. They do when they get to that line of logic, they go the other way and they say, oh, well, we don't know that this is going to happen. So it's probably premature to try to talk about any kind of traffic mitigation or sharing of burden between cities. And so what do? They, the other cities don't make the request, or the other cities have trouble making the request. And as a result, there is a very limited amount of traffic mitigation in scope. You understand, I think we've said it's all about parks and trails. Mr. Tan talked about that himself. Mr. Tan's idea of parks and trails, I mean, the way these developers do their parks and trails are, they take scraps like the Superfund site, like, like things that couldn't have been built before, and they call it a park because they know they can't put a house on it, right? Now is that a park? Is that out of the goodness of their heart a park? Or is that just some scraps I couldn't build on, so we'll call it a park and try to get the best, the best advantage we can out of it through our process? They say it's all about saving water. I think some residents did some very astute calculations, clearly not about saving water. It's all about private property rights. That's interesting. We all abide by our private property rights. We have a specific zoning that comes with our houses that we purchase. The city sort of makes that contract with its governed. And if we came to you and wanted to put a gas station or a hotel in our front yard, you'd say no. But to this developer, the rules don't apply the same way. Why? Because they can sit in a back room for 5 years with the city manager negotiating a contract prior to anybody hearing about it or being involved from a citizen's point of view in that process. And they tell you also not to worry about this because it's really about the next development. It's really about if you don't, the strong arming technique we talked about, we implore you not to be swayed by that. It's not about this development. It's not about what we're proposing. What we're proposing is really good. The boogeyman is just around the corner. It's all controlled by the state, and these Senate bills, one of them that was referenced in one of the letters, didn't even pass. It's all about these Senate bills are going to take all local zoning control away from councils and planning commissions, and they're just going to put something in there that's less desirable than what we're going to give you today. Well, that's clearly not a good reason to do it. And that's not as far as they've gone. They've gone, actually, they and their supporters have gone to the lengths of trying to confuse the ballot initiative to say that it's going to become a homeless shelter. The golf course will become a homeless shelter or a Native American casino. Read your ballot arguments, you'll see it. There's nothing in the initiative about homeless shelters or Native American casinos on this green belt. There's no possible way that the voters would ever vote those things in. There's no federally chartered Native American tribe that's anywhere near the city of La Habra. This is just scare tactics and strong arming, and it's relevant, Mr. Chairman Nazarian, because they're doing it to you. They're doing it to you. They're doing it to this commission. Now they tell you don't worry about the endangered, excuse me? They tell you don't worry about the endangered species. And the way they handled that is to not get the deed restriction lifted, but instead to try to purchase land, but not really defined land. You should really look carefully at that in the EIR. And to say, which is, I mean, for any kind of nature lover out there, which there are very many who have spoken with us, we didn't see any gnat catchers the last time we were there. They're there all the time. We have folks that have looked at it many times. We haven't seen gnat catchers. So what we're going to do is we're just going to remove all their habitat. We're going to remove all their trees when they're not home. And then when they get back to build their nest, they won't have a tree to build it in. So therefore, we won't.
Next person.
We're kind of out of our problem.
Mr. Lees, can I just ask, I'm hearing a general sense of opposition to the project. And I've heard a few comments that I believe the Planning Commission has heard from prior speakers in terms of points as to why one would be opposed to the project. Are there any additional points that have not yet been raised that you would like to share with the commission that they have not already yet heard from other members of the public?
Well, I find it very strange that you're doing this to one of the executive officers of the PAC when I'm trying to summarize in no great detail the arguments that are against this development. Everything has been very, very tied to the development so far. So I will go quickly I will go quickly through the rest of the arguments, and I'm hopeful that you will. I'm not going to rehash everybody's individual arguments.
Yes, Mr.
They
Lees,
are.
if you could just finish with any arguments that the Planning Commission has not yet heard from any other member of the public, that would be appreciated.
Have they heard that? I don't think they've put this together quite. They talk about how the initiative, the measure, the things that the Planning Commission would otherwise be circumventing is defective on its face, and therefore has no reason, they have no reason to consider it or to consider that as part of the will of the people or the vote of the people. And I think that the problem with that line of reasoning is then why are they rushing things so much? Why are they trying to do this right before a vote? They're trying to do it because they know it's not defective, and they know it will prohibit their development if passed by the voters, and they're certain that it's polling high enough that it will. Mr. Stahl, who from One LLP, I'll make a specific refutation of a point he made. The entertainment attorney who wants to talk about land use. He told you that if you did anything but what they ask, he will essentially bankrupt the city. He will essentially consume the city with lawsuits, private attorney general fees, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, read the letter. I mean, this is the tone. This is exactly what I'm talking about, and it's indicative of the continued treatment that the citizens and the opposition of this development have been receiving throughout. They say it's all just like this in Encinitas. You heard Encinitas. That's a new argument. Did anybody refute the Encinitas argument? Not yet. So I'll do it. It's just like Encinitas. It's just like Escondido. It's just like all these other situations. It's going to be invalidated, and therefore you're going to be right back to the table, and we're going to be the ones who develop this parcel. Well, see, the thing is, it's not like Encinitas. It's not like Escondido. It's not like any of the other open space initiatives that anybody cited. And why isn't it? That's because this initiative does one thing and one thing only. It takes parcels that were described as open space in the general plan at the time of the initiative and keeps them as open spaces unless the people decide otherwise. It's not about qualifying a particular parcel. It's not about singling out a particular parcel. It's not about getting a particular zoning change for a specific development. It's only about one thing. And that one thing is attempting to keep the zoning the way it is for open space, to preserve our remaining open spaces.
Mr. Lees, I believe that the commission has heard comments from prior speakers about expressing the desire to want to take the measure before the community, before the commission or the council reviews the project. Are there any additional comments specific to the project itself that you don't believe other members of the public have already provided, just so we can refrain from being repetitive?
No, I believe I just gave you one, and I believe that no other speaker in this process has been interrupted as many times as I have. In fact, nobody's been interrupted at all. And you want to do sort of an interview type process with me. And
Okay,
so
I think we need to move on.
I will give you, let me give you a few closing points. You have a duty to process the applicant's application. We understand that. It's a discretionary entitlement though, and we're asking you to treat it as a discretionary entitlement. You know, I think it was Mr. Hughes, somebody said, people don't like to be activists. People don't like to have to do these meetings, and that's right. And it's clearly COVID and this setup, it's not ideal for this. But this isn't an issue like any you've seen before. I'm sure of that. This isn't like Costco, which is what everybody talks about. Costco had people on both sides of that issue. It had folks that really wanted a Costco who lived close, and people who really didn't want a Costco who lived close. This is something that affects everyone, no matter how close in the city you live to it. And it's something that the citizens are speaking out on. So what I'd ask is this. Please think about sending it back for more work. We talked about the AR. We've talked about the VMT, we've talked about the deed restriction, we've talked about other property, we've talked about soils and landslide issues. Very briefly, you heard it in one comment. The soil has collapsed on people's homes previously. The soil has collapsed. What did Lennar do? They
Correct.
bought them out for $5,000, and many of those folks had to go and get $250,000 repairs done to their homes. So that's, again, a bit of a dishonesty right there. You've heard from your own planning commissioner that their traffic study has cul-de-sacs that aren't cul-de-sacs in the study. And the list goes on and on. Cities that want their fair share of mitigation that haven't received it. This is a temporary fix for a long-term structural problem. They're saying, do this now and it will solve all your problems. And it's the last big greenbelt in the city, last place you could do this. It'll solve your RETA problems. It'll solve your, but then what? But then what? What happens after we're done? What happens 5 or 10 years from now? The structural problems still exist. The spending still exists. And now there's no open space at all to build on. So really, I'm hoping that what you'll do is separate out the long-term problem from the short-term problem. They're giving a short-term profits and a short-term fix to the city's budgetary woes, if you want to call it that. I'm not even sure it'll really contribute that much, which we've heard from other speakers, in exchange for a very long-term effect on the city's general plan and the city's open spaces, and a very long-term effect that everyone, all of the citizens on this call, have to deal with. It never pays to be the first city to solve all the problems. Something will have to be done about pensions, and every city will have to deal with it. Something will have to be done about RETA, and every city will have to deal with it. This city is not the worst, and it's not the best. It's right in the middle on most of those issues. So you could go and take all your green space away and sell everything and mortgage the farm just to solve all the issues the developer is waving in front of your face, or you could think long-term, and that's really what we're hoping you'll do. We respect the things you're doing. We'd like you to send a message back to the developer. They have more work to do. And most of all, we have a novel idea. We'd like you to let the voters vote. Let the voters vote on Measure X in November, and don't get in the way of that vote. Thank you for your time, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Lees. Next caller, please.
Hello?
Yes, we're here.
Hi, hello. My name is Darlene Alquiza.
Darlene, I don't know. We need to have Veronica confirm that you're on the list. I do not believe you are. Veronica, if you can confirm.
My number should be on the screenshot from last.
Okay, what's your number?
It is 714-447-1735.
You're right, you are. You know, we asked for you. You were third on the list, and we asked, and we didn't get a response, so that's why we moved on. But you're here now, so if you would please state your first and last name, spelling slowly.
Thank you kindly. My name is Darlene, spelled D-A-R-R-L-E-N-E. My last name is Alquiza, A-L-Q-U-I-Z-A.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I wanted to thank you for allowing me to speak. And I'll start by saying that I'm so glad that last comment given yesterday touched on the toxicity of the land that might be used. And I hope it was considered as you all were going to your own homes last night. I grew up in the area off of Idaho and Rosecrans, and I was originally going to talk about the problems of additional traffic, which would be the biggest impact on my family. I was also going to talk about how there's a study on the conditions of children, and they found that the biggest factor in determining outcomes of children is the size of the parks. You can look up a zip code, and based on the size of the open spaces in that zip code, there's a direct correlation to the conditions of the children who live there. So this golf course is an open space that allows for adolescents in this community to flourish.
My nieces and nephews have used this space, and when my daughters are old enough, I hope they can use this space too. I believe it should stay a golf course because it is the safest to use as a toxic land. Because as a park, children will spend hours daily there, whereas golfers are just constantly moving and only on the land in passing. But the most important thing that I want to point out to you is that you have a very important responsibility. You guys get to decide on whether or not people will be allowed to live on this land, which is actually considered toxic ground. I have an advanced degree in human development with a special interest in epigenetics. And epigenetics is a finding in science proving that environmental factors have an impact on genetic expression. And what we are exposed to can affect us on a genetic level. So really, imagine the impact of this decision. You're deciding if a family or multiple families can live on toxic land, and if their child should be allowed to walk barefoot in their yard of toxic ground, if their pets can sniff the toxic dirt, and if they can plant a garden on this soil. This is the single most important thing that I ask you to consider. I understand that time has passed, but what is important to understand is toxic substances do not dissipate over time. The sprinklers, they did not help the toxins on this land to go away. And how do I know? Please consider the fact that if you look up rice cereal for infants on the FDA website, they limit the amount of rice cereal that is safe for babies because it contains arsenic. And that arsenic came from pesticides sprayed on the cotton that grew on the field decades before. And with all of the turning of the soil, the watering, and the growing, the arsenic did not dissipate. So please consider that. So if you choose to allow homes to be built on this land, you are allowing families to expose themselves, their pets, their babies, and their children to a toxicity that may cause them cancer or possibly epigenetic changes that will be cross-generational. You decide if families can live under these potentially harmful circumstances or direct them, or you can direct them to a better opportunity to live on a land that will not cause harm to them or their children. I please ask you to consider, you are the ones who are the protectors of the residents of La Habra. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Alquiza. We very much appreciate your input. Have a good night, ma'am.
Thank you.
I think next would be Veronica, number 6, Greg's laptop, if that's correct.
We were going to go back to number 1, Siobhan Brown.
Oh, okay. All right. Speaker, are you there?
Yes,
Please
I'm
unmute
here.
yourself on your end, and please spell your first and last name and where you're calling from before addressing the commission. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you for the opportunity, the planning commissioners, for this forum, first and most. And my name is Shavan, S-H-A-V-A-N, last of Brown like the color. I'm also speaking in behalf of my mother, which is Ruth Brown, R-U-T-H, last of Brown like the color. The address is 841 Sandalwood. First, I want to just say I was very disappointed in the beginning of this at the lack of notification on this form to our community. I didn't receive a letter in reference of this. I received it from a neighbor. So I missed the first evening or opportunity to speak on it, but I'm glad I'm able to now. Due to the pandemic, I understand this is why we're doing the form this way. What I don't understand is why we're rushing this decision. I don't understand why it couldn't be tabled for a later date. I say this because we have a strong community that has strong opinions about this. A lot of them are against this, this development. We have a number of elderly people in our community that are not computer savvy. They are not tech savvy, and they have a voice and opinion. I have several neighbors that have come to me to ask me to speak in their behalf. So I'm not going to go into specifics because I know a lot of people want to speak and have their share. But again, I just think that this should have been tabled later on for all of us to have the opportunity to speak and voice our concerns about this development. As you can tell, I'm not for it. I'm against it. I've been in the city of La Habra for over 20 years, and I've seen several changes. Some of them are good or bad and bad. I'm really just disappointed in some of the issues. I'll touch on a few. I'm not going to go into a lot of details on it because it has been, my opinion has been voiced on several occasions, like others. The water drought, it would be an impact definitely in our community if they do the development for the 400 homes. The traffic that we have at Euclid, Imperial, even on Sandalwood, it would be greatly impacted by us. As now we have maybe about 4 times during the day that it's unbearable that we can't get in or get out onto the streets, and especially on Sandalwood, just in and out of our driveways. I have some parents that are extremely rude when picking up their kids, and we can't even back out of our driveways. So all of this would be a great impact on the community. Also, the amount of homes that they're building there, it's I guess approximately 400. Just think of more cars being on the streets during that time. So that would be a great impact of our community, as well as the power outages. I know we had a few in the city of La Habra, and we can imagine if we had 400 homes, how many more power outages that we would have in the community. And also I heard another person talk about the internet service. I have never seen such a poor service of internet, especially during this pandemic where everyone was using the internet. We have poor service in La Habra, and that's another issue. If we bring 400 homes, what a great impact it would be. A few more things, the post office. Now when you go into a post office on any given time and the line is long. So if you have 400 more homes, how many more people will be accessing that? So it would cause, I mean, the post office we have in the community is extremely small compared to some of the others. And you can imagine with 400 homes of a great impact that it will have on the post office and their services. Speaking in behalf of the police department and fire department, because of this pandemic, a lot of the cities are either doing work, and I just don't see how you would have the funds to hire more police or fire to take on this area with 400 more homes in the neighborhood. Also, being here, I've noticed the homelessness that we've had. When I first moved here, we had none. Now, speaking as of today, it's a lot. So I can imagine with 400 more homes and how that would be a great impact. These are the concerns that I have. I didn't touch on it a lot because, like I said, I want to keep the time for other people. I do appreciate the time for you allowing me to speak, but I need to know and ask a question. Have you guys made the decision? Why is this such a rush? You know, again, this form should have been opened up at our table for a later date and opened up to give the opportunity for everyone to speak and voice their opinion. And I thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. We appreciate your input. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Next caller, please.
Okay, we are going with down the list, number 6, Greg's laptop. Please unmute yourself on your end to address the commission. Press *6 if you're calling in from a phone. Please spell your first and last name and where you are from before addressing the commission.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I spoke last night, Greg Jones with Jones Real Estate, and I wanted to add one more thing last night that I forgot to mention, and that is
Mr. Jones, I'll tell you what, that'll be fine if you could make it extremely quick because we don't allow 2 bites of the apple, so to speak. Each speaker,
double dipping.
Yeah, very, very, very quickly. I'll let you get it out.
I just want to let you know that we have the Birch Ford property that we can offer up for affordable housing. And part of what you guys have done is zone that for mixed use. And the zoning on that is up to 50 units per acre. And we would certainly entertain that, along with having, hopefully having the ability to work with the Planning Commission on other parcels of property where you have a 1 acre minimum where there is no room to expand, and allowing those parcels to be developed with less than an acre. And that's all I really have to say, but I think there are alternative sites, alternative solutions. And I just wanted to point that out because I was not able to do that last night.
That's fine. All right, Mr. Jones, thanks very much for that additional comment. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Next caller, please.
Okay, going down the list. DQ, if you are logged in, can you please raise your hand? Okay, we will come back to number 7. Number 8, Marila Viaga, we are going to unmute you. Please unmute yourself on your end to address the commission. Press *6 if you're calling in from a phone. Please spell your first and last name and where you are from before addressing the commission.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you so much for taking my call. You'll have to excuse me for a minute as I kind of go through my notes here. We're kind of at a disadvantage because I had planned on speaking on Monday night and I was never called upon. So I have a little bit of variations in my notes. And there was also a number of business owners that were not called upon either. So let me just start here. My name is Marie Laviaga. I am the president of the La Habra Chamber of Commerce, and I'm also a resident of 34 years in La Habra. I live on Kinley Street over by the Costco. When the chair closed the public comment yesterday, there were at least 7 other business owners that were still hoping that had kind of come Monday and then Tuesday and tried to get in and make some comment in support of the project. They had raised their hands and they weren't called upon, and I can name a few of them. There was Sammy Koda, there are Amy Brick, the Patels, there's Julie Shin, Kwan Lee, Barbara Hernandez, a variety of different industries, but businesses nevertheless in La Habra.
Ms. Lavia, will you please excuse me? I'm so sorry, Marie, but I just want to say something very quickly because as I'm sure you're aware, that Monday night we opened up public hearings for those wishing to speak in support of the project. Yeah. And we ran through the queue completely, asked if there was anybody else. There was nobody there. We had no choice but to continue to those wishing to speak in opposition. However, we received this notification that there were some that felt like they couldn't connect. So what we did is we went that extra step by doing something that's somewhat unprecedented by allowing those wishing to speak in support again the opportunity at the close of the last opposition speakers last night. So we've done that, and if someone didn't raise their hand last night, I understand what you're saying, but we've actually given supporters 2 opportunities to speak. So what I'd like to see you do is, if you would please try to address the specifics of this project and either your support or opposition. What we can't do is entertain the notion of adding any other additional speakers at this point. We are resolute on the list that we have here, so we won't make exceptions to this list. So again, I would ask if you would please try to focus on the specifics of the proposal and your opinions on those specifics.
Okay, so then when you closed yesterday at 10:30, but then later said, okay, raise your hand, some of these business owners had already hung up. So that's kind of where the problem came in. And then they're coming to me and saying, you know, of course, I lingered till the very end. So I was able to get an opportunity to speak. The other problem that we are encountering is that the hostility from the opposition has even caused the business owners to shy away. And I'll give you an example pertaining to me. In the chat, I was accused of being bought off. And I resent very much, if anybody knows me at all, knows that I don't take well to threats or accusations or lies about myself. In no means was I ever bought off. I am in support of this project. because I think it would be good for the business community. Having another 400 plus homes in La Habra, homes anywhere in La Habra, would bring business to our community. And that our business owners need that. They need strength. They need that extra income. So what happens? I get accused. We have one of our other business owners today that received a threatening phone call. I received this, and I'll even show it to you because I refuse to read it. See if you can see it. Let me see. The little comment letter there that die? Seriously? Seriously. I don't even understand. And you wonder why our business community is not rising up and saying, we need the help. We need extra residents here in La Habra. So that's one of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention is there's no need for threats. There's no need for lying and accusations and what have you. There really isn't. And I don't appreciate it one bit. Like I said, I have been in the community for 30, I'm going to say 32, but it's probably more like 34 years. I enjoy a very comfortable life in La Habra. I really do. Spending a few extra minutes or seconds or whatever at an intersection to bring in extra business to our community is not too much to ask of me. I will still enjoy the community and enjoy all its amenities and the whole, we're not back 30 years ago. We've got to move on. We've got to grow. We've got to develop and bring strength to the community. We're part of Orange County. We've got to act like Orange County. We've got to act like little fish in a big pond. Let's grow, let's develop, let's pivot, let's do these things that we need to bring strength to the community. It would help the city with the taxes, the property taxes, sales taxes. So for those reasons, I'm very supportive of this development. Additionally, I personally am an outside person. I love the outdoors. I'm a runner, walker, anything I'm going to move, I'm out there. I'm not a golfer. Too slow for me, way too slow for me. So right now, as it stands, I cannot use the golf course. I use it for business event once a year. Other than that, I don't. I'm excited about those trails and the parks, and maybe they're not elite parks like some of the opposition has suggested. The pictures that I've seen, they look like something I would definitely use. I know my family would use. So there's a lot of amenities that I'm excited about. A new clubhouse up there. There's things that this whole project is offering that I personally am excited about. Would you indulge me in reading just a couple of statements from some of the other businesses that offered support? Can we do that?
I think that would be fine unless council suggests otherwise. I think that's okay. They're relatively brief.
Yes,
Maria?
I really condensed them just so that
Okay.
I'd be able to speak on
Right. Well, thanks very much. That's fine.
Okay, so one of our businesses said that they're supporters because they feel like the economy and the it'll be helpful to the financial well-being of the city. So there's others that said they have been hurt by the housing crisis and they would want to do their part to solve the problem. There's another that said something like it's a well-planned project for the community, the parks, the trails, the open space, that they're looking forward to that. They strongly support the Ranchos La Habra project. Let me see, what else did they say? I think that was it. I do have 2 letters that were submitted as well. Can I go ahead and read those?
Those weren't submitted earlier today or in the past?
I don't know for sure. I can read it or I can tell you who they're from and you can tell me.
Can you perhaps, just like you summarize the other comments, can you sum the letters, just briefly, the overall synopsis of either support or opposition for the project, please.
Okay, they
And
are,
perhaps, I'm sorry, I think maybe names, it might be helpful to have the names of the folks that are making that comment. I think that might be good for the record as well.
okay, Juan Guerrero,
Okay,
he was a former planning commissioner and ad hoc fiscal review committees, worked well within the La Habra area and knows it well. He says it is a good plan backed by sound environmental impact report, long list of mitigation that will effectively address its potential impacts. As a subject matter expert in the state of California on environmental geology, the project will satisfactorily address redevelopment of this former oil-filled property to a better use for the community. Besides bringing nearly 450 new homes to La Habra, it will generate the resale of dozens of older, more affordable homes when people sell their homes and move to Rancho La Habra. This is how we will ultimately solve the housing crisis, by approving one project at a time. And it goes on, but that was like the gist.
well, you know, we got his letter because I know Juan and we worked together on the planning commission. I read his letter. So his letter was submitted as part of the third volume of the EIR, the comments. So we all read that for sure.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, what about a letter from David Ross?
I don't remember. Go ahead.
Oh boy, this one's a little bit more lengthy.
Mr. Chair, if I may, this is
on the
Andrew,
record,
Director of Community
today.
Development. Marie, we did receive Mr. Ross's correspondence this evening and have forwarded it to the commission for review.
Okay. Okay,
So we're good there.
I think we are good. So I think that sums it up. I'm definitely in favor, and there's a variety of businesses that feel the same way. So if you would, I urge you to make a favorable recommendation to the City Council.
Well, Ms. Laviega, we especially appreciate your persistence and tenacity in finally getting to this point. And I am sorry that there were these challenges on Monday. I just want you to rest assured that we did make every effort to make sure that you were heard and that other supporters were heard. But we very much appreciate your input, and you can be guaranteed that we will consider it carefully. So thanks again very much.
Thank you.
All right. Next caller, please.
Okay, we were continuing down the list. Yes, on X. You are unmuted. Please make sure that your microphone is unmuted on your end. Please spell your first and last name and where you are from before addressing the commission.
Is that me? That's me.
If
Hello?
you're yes on you.
That's me. My name is Monica Faith, M-O-N-I-C-A. Faith, like Faith, Hope, and Charity, F as in Fred, A-I, T as in Tom, H as in Harry.
Right.
I'm actually a former resident of La Habra. I moved, I would say about 4 years ago, because there was no affordable housing in La Habra. So we ended up moving to Brea. And I want to say it was one of the best decisions of my life, because now we're in an area where there's plenty of open space. I have parks, large parks down the street, and I'm very happy with the decision. I miss La Habra. I love La Habra, and it will always hold a special place in my heart. And I want to eventually move back. But if there's going to be no open spaces in La Habra for us to go, and the largest place to go as a park is La Bonita, which is mostly baseball fields, where are our kids supposed to play? Where are we supposed to go? You would be the only city in their surrounding areas that doesn't have a golf course. You're the only city in the area that doesn't have a regional park or a larger park for kids with lots of playgrounds. And I'm not even going to touch on traffic or any of the stuff that everyone else is. I just want to make sure to reiterate the point that that's your last open space. That's it. You build on that and you're going to have nothing left for open space. And I think that's really sad. And I implore you to really consider that your last open space could possibly be gone for more houses and more traffics. And that's all I have to say.
Well, Ms. Faith, thank you very much. We appreciate that a great deal. Let me ask you a quick question too. We've got you down as number 12 on the list too. Is that also you? Yes on X, number 12?
No, that is a different yes on X.
Okay, very good. Well, again, thank you very much and nice night.
Thank you.
Next caller, please.
Okay, going down the list, number 10, Lena Adamo. We are going to unmute your microphone. Please be sure that it's unmuted on your end. Please spell your first and last name and where you are from before addressing the commission. Lena Adamo, if you're calling in from a phone, press *6 to unmute yourself.
Veronica, is there an indication that Ms. Adamo might be there with a raised hand or something, or where are we standing?
They have not unmuted themselves.
I see. Well, you want to see if her hand goes back up again and move on?
Okay, we will come back to Lena. Number 11, LH, if you are in the queue, can you please raise your hand?
Hi, can you hear me now? This is Lena.
Oh, yes, we can. Ms. Adamo, yes.
Oh, good.
Gotcha.
Okay, I don't know what happened there. That was kind of weird, but can I speak now? Is that okay?
No, go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, I'll start again. I was talking and I didn't know you couldn't hear me.
Oh, yeah, we
Okay.
could at that point.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lena Adamo, Lenaadamo. I live on Wilshire Avenue near Beach and Lambert. I want to make my statement short and to the point. I agree with the La Habra residents, what they have professionally and sincerely stated the last 2 nights. I have lived in La Habra for 8 years, and the last 3 years, I have noticed the increase in the population of people and traffic. It is already too crowded here now. After looking 2 years for my home, I chose La Habra for the peaceful rural area away from the freeways, close shopping centers, and medical facilities. I am a concerned resident and nurse of 39 years. I have witnessed a hit and run accident on Beach Boulevard. I remember Danny Martin, the friendly resident, recently ran over riding his bike and killed. An increase in crime and homelessness. I fear these issues will continue to expand if not addressed and stopped now. Please, city officials and city planners, take heed to our many authentic concerns. Please reject this project. Do not ruin our environment, our beautiful city of La Habra, so we can stay healthy physically and mentally. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Ms. Adamo, thank you very much for your input. We appreciate your time and attention to this proposal as well. Have a good night, ma'am, please.
You too, thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Okay, going down the list, number 11. LH, if you are in the queue, please raise your hand.
I believe our previous attempt with LH was also silent, as I recall.
Okay, we will go down to number 12, another yes on X. We're going to unmute you. Please unmute yourself on your end. Before speaking to the commission, please spell your first and last name and where you are from.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Peter Cruz, Petercruz, and I live on Las Lomas near Vista Verde. I wanted to address to be more germane to the debate in opposition to the amendment, but I wanted to focus on the fact that there's a need for translation services and in-person component to this hearing, along with the city council hearings. I think it's important that especially for a lot of the older residents and La Habrans in the call, to be able to hear and to even have an in-person conversation, even with COVID-19 protocols, to be able to participate in this, because it does have some difficulty for some of them. So I want to thank the residents that are through Zoom and learning through this process. What I wanted to talk about is the timeliness. I submitted a public comment in a written form, and I don't want to repeat what I wrote on there, but I want to talk about some points that were not in my written comments. Notably, the long-term financial stability of the city in relation to the development and the general plan. So a lot of the things that a lot of the residents have been discussing, much of their concerns are about how we're going to manage the long-term issues of the general plan in relation to the business community and the revitalization efforts that they want to see versus not having new housing. Personally, I'm not in that position. I'm in opposition to this on the basis of it for open spaces and environmental issues. I think the irreversibility of it is a problem for me. I think that if we're going to take environmental issues into account, that we should respect the open spaces and listen to the residents that are closest to that area that's going to be impacted the most. One of the most important things that I've noticed is that, as far as I know, none of the city council members are going to live near that development. So there's an issue about how the city is being represented and underrepresented in different parts of the city currently. So there's a democratic deficit in terms of how the city is being represented. And so that is what's happening with the constituent group, Save La Habra, and other supporters of that in response to what's happening with the housing development. They're upset because they're not getting the representation they need, along with other parts of the city that are hearing that these are hearings and comments that are not going, that as far as I'm aware, and I've lived in the city for over 20 years, this is the only time I've ever heard of any public hearing being messaged out to my area in Las Lomas. So I think that's a really big challenge for the city itself, for city government, but I lay it squarely in the city council's responsibility to be able to handle those issues more effectively in messaging to the community about whether it's a business development, whether it's a housing development, to be able to reach out to those stakeholders, to be able to reach out to the housing community, to existing residents, to be able to say, this is something that we're thinking about. We want to bring you in as a partner about what's going on with the future developer. Another component that I noticed was the idea of a linear or regional park was brought up. I think that's a really important component to this. If there's going to be a compromise, it would probably be that idea. The idea that we need parks to solve the parks deficit that's found in the general plan. That would be something that I think we can come to some agreement with, especially with the parks commissioners providing that advisory opinion to the city council. And I just want to point out to some of the some of the people that are listening in and watching. The signatories of individuals that are against Measure X in particular, they have made a point to say that this is undesirable development that would come in, unhealthy development, and would undermine local control. And I think that's a really bad argument to make, and it's a scare tactic that's been used repeatedly in zoning, and historically that's been a racist argument to be made for all types of development. And I think that that's a really narrow retrograde argument to be making, to say that any type of development is a bad development, whether it be homeless centers, an Indian casino. Those are obviously unrealistic developments that are never going to happen in La Habra. So the idea that you're going to scare residents, particularly the residents that have spoken for the past 3 days and have lived here for longer than I have, and they're more aware of the developments that have existed before. The idea that somehow they're going to build these type of facilities as a scare tactic isn't scaring them and isn't intimidating them. So I think that for the younger residents, including myself, I'm listening to those older residents and understanding that those residents have their best interests in ours as well. And I do want to just pay respects to the Planning Commission for the 3 days that you guys have spent the time doing this, and assessing what's going on with this controversial development, and having the deliberative process. I do hope that you guys give equal time to everybody. I think the Chamber of Commerce person was out of order, quite honestly, because it's not her time to speak. But I appreciate the democratization to be able to have the public hearing with no time limit. I think it's important for the residents to hear themselves and hear everybody, and for the commissioners to listen to all the opinions that are going on. And I just want to thank the city of La Habra during COVID-19 handling this in the middle of all this. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. We appreciate your input very much. Thanks again and have a good night. Next caller, please.
Going down the list, we will go to number 13, Benjamin F. We're going to unmute your microphone. Please be sure that you are unmuted on your end. Please spell your first and last name and where you are from before addressing the commission.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Since I spoke on Monday already, there's only one point I want to make, but I wanted to yield my time in case somebody haven't spoken. So I'll finish last.
Well, two things. Unfortunately, folks can't, if they get in the queue and they're here, they can't yield their time to somebody else. And
no, I'm not yield my time. I'm talking about let the people behind me go first.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you can only speak once. And I want,
okay.
like Sarita to
then if that's the case, then I'll make it very quick. Yeah.
Well, we did let Mr. Jones do it, so we'll let you do it. But if you promise me, you'll be super quick.
1 minute. That's it.
Okay. All right.
I noticed one thing. This is not to. I tend to focus on fact, but I have a thing about one of your commissioner could have a possible conflict of interest in terms of making a recommendation, or obviously if obviously if it's declined, then it's okay. But if it's approved, the reason why I said that one of your commissioner on board, it's a real estate professional, and obviously if this project does move forward, it will be more home on the market, more inventory on the market to sell. So although I respect everybody's professionalism, but I think that could be a thing that if residents find out that, well, one of your commission, it's a real estate professional, and there's could be a conflict of interest. So that's the only one.
Okay.
One thing
All right. I'll let you. You said that, so now it's in the record. So I'll let you do that. Otherwise, the comment is not specific to this proposal. So now that you said that, I'll thank you very much for that, and I'll ask you to have a good night.
You too.
All right. All right. Thanks. Next caller, please.
Okay, we will go to number 14, Diane D. If you're in the queue, can you please raise your hand? Okay, I don't see her in the queue, so we will move on to number 15, which is this phone number 714-468-4140. We're going to unmute you now. Please unmute yourself on your end to address the commission. Press *6 if you are calling in from a phone. Please spell your first and last name and where you are from before addressing the commission.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, we're here.
Yeah, I think the number was read incorrectly, but here we are.
Go ahead.
So there you are, and here we are.
All right. My name is James Bailey, last name B-A-I-L-E-Y. I'm
All
a
right.
retired university professor, and I'm speaking on behalf of my wife, who is a retired nurse, and my son, who is a civil engineer who practices or specializes in traffic. As 45-year residents of La Habra in the nearby vicinity of the planned project and the prior one by this developer, we oppose this residential development. In addition to the added negative impact on traffic, access to services, and drain on precious resources, there are many other consequences. Also, this doesn't seem prudent given the current worldwide pandemic and similar crises that may follow, which argue against higher population density, but for more open spaces. In addition, seems this is too important of an issue to be without an open face-to-face hearing. Placing reliance on Zoom or other digital or electronic technology, for which many residents are not familiar or proficient, has not allowed full participation of all affected people. The 7,000 approximately, I guess it is, letters of support fall short of that description. Who doesn't support the 3 items on this letter? But as I read it, it says parks, not park. It also says traffic repairs. I guess that's what will be needed due to all of the extra traffic.
That was explained.
Finally, why are the present hearings being conducted before the November election? Measure X, approved by the City Council concerning the required zoning change for the development, is before the electorate to decide. A very small fraction of that electorate are represented in these hearings. Thanks for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Mr. Bailey, we appreciate you sharing your time with us as well. Thank you very much and have a good night.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Going down the list, number 16, Alex, if you are in the queue, can you please raise your hand? I don't see Alex in the queue, so we're going back up to the number 2, Robert. Roman, if you are in the queue, can you please raise your hand? Okay, going down the list, number 4, calling user number 2. If you are in the queue, please raise your hand. Okay, going down the list, number 7, DQ. If you're in the queue, please raise your hand. Okay, going down the list, number 11, LH. If you're in the queue, please raise your hand. Okay, number 14, Diane B. If you're there, please raise your hand. And we have come back to number 16, Alex, and I don't see them in the queue.
All right, Veronica, thank you very much. Unless something's changed, we've given ample opportunity for all those in the queue last night to make their commentary. So on that basis, and with the meeting protocols in mind, I will now call an end to all oral testimony. And now we will summarize the written comments that have been received since 5:00 p.m. this afternoon. And we're gonna do that though, but we're gonna do that in 5 minutes. It's been 1 hour and a half so far, and I'm going to ask for a health break now. We will recess for 5 minutes, 5 minutes only. We'll be back. We're gonna call it 8:06 because I've already been speaking for probably 30 seconds. So let's take that break. Everybody leave your screens on, and we will be back at 8:06. Thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's see where we are with regard to my colleagues. Do we have Vice Chair Manley?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Do we have Commissioner Powell?
Yes.
And do we have Commissioner Bernier?
Yes.
And Commissioner Munoz?
Yes.
Very good. Do we have Mr. Ho?
Yes, I'm here.
And do we have Veronica?
Yes, I'm here.
We are reconvening this meeting of the Planning Commission. First question is to Veronica, and that is, do we have any written comments to summarize tonight?
We do not.
Okay, thank you very much. Then at this time, this is now the time for the applicant to have an opportunity for rebuttal. And I will ask the applicant to do so, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Andrew Ho, Director of Community Development. At this time, Veronica, if we can unmute the applicant, Andrew Han from Lennar. And Andrew, we will share our screen with you so you can run through your rebuttal presentation.
Please share the screen, please.
Where's the share?
All right. While my colleague here setting up the sharing of the screen, I will begin my comments.
Good evening, Mr. Han. How are you?
Good evening. Good evening, Chairman, Vice Chairman, and Commission members, and the great staff and public at home. I hope all are safe and healthy. Again, my name is Andrew Han, and I'm Director of Forward Planning at Lennar Homes. We all greatly appreciate and thank you for this rebuttal opportunity. As we proceed with the third evening of the Planning Commission, first and foremost, I want to express our sincere gratitude to the Commission members. As an unpaid voluntary board, you are serving your civic engagement and devoting tremendous amount of your personal time to listen to the public and to deliberate in an unbiased and objective manner. Regardless of your take on our project, we greatly appreciate your efforts. As I stated in the beginning of my presentation on Monday night, you heard intense passion from those opposing this development. We acknowledge this is a development of great interest and relevance to the city. This application has been in public awareness for the past 5 years. And although there have been extraordinary outreach efforts to the community during this time, it is clear we need to provide further clarity through this important public hearing process. In my comments tonight, I will address several of the misconceptions that were shared about the Rancho La Habra project. One right off the bat is that Lennar developed Westridge. Lennar promised and reneged on our promises. Actually, Lennar was a merchant builder buying property from a master developer after it has been planned out, entitled, designed, all the land development has taken place, and the master amenities have been promised by the master developer. If one has concerns about or claims about the homes themselves, that is Lennar's responsibility. But Lennar was not the master developer who has promised to make all these amenities and reneged on those promises. It is not us. And I hope the staff can check the records to confirm the veracity of my statement today. While you may choose to agree or disagree with the professional analysis conducted by city staff and the team of experts tasked with reviewing our proposal, There's no doubt that all of the comments we heard over the last few nights are important issues we feel are addressed by the exceptionally thorough work complete by La Habra City staff, their experts, and our project development team. First and foremost, it is important that we acknowledge that the proposal before you is a collaborative effort of Lennar and the city that has unfolded over months and years. Your staff has worked tirelessly to amend the proposal, review its impacts, and ensure it is the best fit for the community. While many comments imply that Rancho La Habra is being pushed by a developer, we view it as a joint exercise with the city that will benefit all. And the fact is, your city staff has been vigorous in demanding a quality plan and community, economic, and environmental benefits. And the terms of the development agreement reflect those requirements imposed on us. La Habra is a desirable place to live. I'm sure the city is proud that the current residents want to stay and others want to join. The desirability is evident in the housing demand. We as builders don't create housing demand. We are proud of building quality homes for families and to meet the housing demand. The mismatch between the supply and demand is creating the housing crisis that we are all experiencing. Increasing prices is an indication. As I'm sure you have realized, La Habra will experience housing growth, whether at this location or elsewhere in the city. Rather than attempting to stop all development, this is an opportunity to choose quality development with thoughtful mitigation measures and robust public benefits. This is an economic development that can help the entire city. There were numerous factually incorrect statements that were said during the public comment period that I feel are important to correct for the record. While there is not time to respond to every comment, I believe our time will be best spent on covering 8 major topics for review, as shown on the slide right now. I urge you to ask questions to the city staff and EIR consultants as you deliberate. Don't take my word for it. The EIR process in California is the most thorough environmental analysis process that exists anywhere in the country. And as a result, the EIR on this project is the end product of 5 years of hard work from the city staff and environmental experts. Let me just go over those 8 points that I would like to make. And I will describe each one of those points in more detail. First, there were claims made about the petitions. We have some additional information or data that I'll to share with you that support our claim that the petitions represent La Habran's support. Second, there were claims made that this is a Superfund site. The area is entirely covered with toxics, and that the new city park is an unsafe environment. That couldn't be further from the truth. And I have experts with me who will go over those findings. Third, that this new city park we propose is something that we came out on our own and that we are pushing to the city who's not welcoming the park. It is a reflection of the extensive and multi-year collaboration with the city. And I have Pat Murphy with SMP here with me, who will go over the design process. Fourth, there were comments made that the CFD can potentially expose La Habra taxpayers to liability. That is not a correct statement. And we have a legal counsel with us who will go over how that statement is incorrect. The next two items, number 5 and 6, relate to the traffic impact analysis that were completed. There was a statement made that the fair share contributions to neighboring cities is to put it bluntly, is a sham that the developer has no intention of paying. We want to clarify that position, and that we're offering a position that the money we pay will never come back to us. There is discussion about whether the VMT is a appropriate framework to analyze the traffic study. And we will discuss that as well. Another point I want to make is regarding the fiscal impact. That this development is a drain on the general fund, and that instead of contributing positively to the community, that it will negatively impact the overall fiscal position of the city. That is not, again, a correct statement. Finally, we want to talk about the public benefits package, not a affordable housing contribution in isolation, not the public benefit cash contribution in isolation, but the overall robust public benefits package that I express as valued at $40 million. And we want to further expand on that and how that compares to other projects, how much they paid, and how our project compares. And I think you will come to the conclusion that the overall benefits package we're offering is robust and is a exceptional merit. So let me talk about the petitions in a little more detail. We pulled a sample of 218 petitions to study addresses shown on the petition survey. You see the city boundaries in blue. We did pick up a fair amount of signers from La Habra Heights, and actually an address from South America. I imagine the person is an overseas visitor with relatives or family members in La Habra. Even if you put aside those petitions from outside the city boundaries, that equates to over 6,000 signatures. A formidable number that serves as evidence of project support. I do stand corrected when I said on Monday night that our spot checking has indicated 95% of those petitions are from La Habra. So that is a correction. And I do apologize for that correction. I would like to offer one comment on the petitions from outside the city. While they may not be residents, the city serves those who work, who operate businesses, and the like. I don't think we should be casting aside their voice completely. Here is a copy of the actual petition. It says twice in the beginning and the end that this is a support card for the Rancho La Habra project. Let me be upfront about the purpose of this petition. It was designed to highlight benefits of our development. We felt that the organized efforts to emphasize project impacts but ignore project benefits were drowning out opportunities to engage in thoughtful discussion. We wanted to see if there's support for the project benefits to accompany our residential development. Again, the Rancho La Habra project has been in the public domain for 5 years. And our outreach to the community continues. And we will refine and clarify support for the city council. When one asks what the Rancho La Habra project is about, petition gatherers responded that this is a residential development on the Westridge golf course, and it is an alternative to a potentially high density housing. Regarding the claim that the signers didn't know about the project, please take a look at the map. If you could go back to the previous slide, please. Signers are not only from throughout La Habra, but also from the Westridge community and the areas immediately around it. As you know, the residents in these areas are extremely active in following this development closely and know very well what Rancho La Habra entails. I hope that puts some more context to the petitions we talked about. What I'd like to do next is I'd like to switch up a little bit. I think instead of hearing me speak on Monday and today, I'm going to introduce some of our team members who are subject matter experts on the various topics we'll be covering. The first gentleman that I'd like to introduce is Dennis Bradnick with Lawson Geotechnical Consultants. And he is a geotechnical engineer. And I'd like him to address the issue of the sites, the environmental condition, the geotechnical stability that were mentioned in the public testimony today. Here is Dennis.
Oh, look at somebody has hacked our slide. Can we clear that?
Please go ahead. Go ahead, please.
All right, good evening, commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to elaborate on the soils conditions at the proposed Rancho La Habra project. As Andrew indicated, my name is Dennis Bradnick. I'm a licensed civil and geotechnical engineer here in California. I've been in the geotechnical consulting industry for over 20 years. I've worked on numerous sites of similar size and geotechnical complexity as this one. We feel very comfortable with the on-site geotechnical conditions. And I've personally worked on the project since 2014. Before I get going, I'd like to elaborate on the background research and all the technical work that's been done to understand the on-site geotechnical conditions. This included an extensive review of the past reports for the site going all the way back to 1970s. This includes what we refer to as the geotechnical investigation reports and the as-graded reports that are associated with the Westridge development. So we are very familiar with the on-site geotechnical conditions. In addition to this, we performed subsurface work, including hollow stem borings, bucket auger borings, and CPTs, or cone penetration tests. Additionally, we performed laboratory testing. Lastly, we performed analysis on all the old and new data that we had. If you could just go back to the previous slide for me.
I'm sorry, my mouse is a little jumpy.
As you can see on the map, the proposed Rancho La Habra site is shown with the black boundary around it on the north side, as well as the existing Westridge development, which is shown on the southern or the lower portion of the map. Beach Boulevard is on the left-hand side and South Idaho Street is on the right. Each of the red dots shown on here represent a capped oil well. As you can see, there are only 23 capped oil wells within the proposed Rancho La Habra site. However, there are 81 capped wells within the limits of the existing Westridge residential development. On the next slide, I'm going to zoom into the park site, which is sort of shown. If you can go back one more, show them where the park site is on the next slide. We're going to change the orientation and we're going to zoom into the park site. That's the park site that's over there. As we change to the next slide, the orientation is going to switch. Now north is up on the page, which puts Idaho Street towards the top and Beach Boulevard towards the bottom. So regarding the concern that the park site is full of toxic soil, contrary to statements provided by others in the public commentary, there are only 3 abandoned oil wells within the city park. If you could just show them the 3 that are within the limits. So there's that one there that will be within the limits of the usable space. This one over here, 78, and then 241. These existing capped oil wells will be re-abandoned to today's standards, which are higher than the standards to which they were previously abandoned. Also shown on the exhibit is 2 of the capped wells, which are in the boundary or the perimeters of the site or the slopes, and that's that 143 and 360 that's over there. So based on our review of the old reports and research, there is no oil affected soils within the proposed new park site. So contrary to statements by others in the public commentary, the proposed new park site will not be full of toxic soils. Can you go to the next slide? There were some comments in the commentary regarding the fact that there were not previously provided reports that addressed these. And I just want to point out that as noted in Appendix M of the EIR contains a site assessment report. Appendix P of the EIR contains the geotechnical evaluation report. I'm going to talk a little bit about geotechnical stability and liquefaction. The perimeter slopes around the proposed Rancho La Habra site were geotechnically evaluated. That means we drew geotechnical cross sections, we assigned the shear strength of the soils, and we analyzed them under 3 conditions. We analyzed them under the short-term stability, under the long-term stability, and pseudostatic, what we call earthquake stability. The conclusion is that the perimeter slopes meet or exceed the minimum code requirements for slope stability. Or in other words, the slopes will be stable as designed. I'll touch briefly on liquefaction before I wrap up over here. Liquefaction is a temporary condition in which soils behave as a liquid during an earthquake event. So we need 3 conditions: loose sandy soils, shallow groundwater, and an earthquake. On site, we have isolated thin soil layers which meet this criteria. Based on our analysis of the CPT data, liquefaction-induced settlement is calculated to be approximately 2 inches. This is well within the tolerable limits for the proposed residential units that will be constructed with a post-tension foundation system. To recap the other bullet points that are on the slide, again, we recap 3 of the 5 abandoned wells within the new park site. Only 3 of them are in the usable space. Those wells will be capped and re-abandoned according to the current Dogger standards. And the existing wells represent a safety hazard, but will be re-abandoned to the current standards to improve the safety for all. I'd like to say thank you very much.
Before we go further, there clearly is some interaction and it looks like some efforts to interfere with the presentation. If the city staff could disable the feature so that someone can write text or comment over our slide, that would be much appreciated. The next point I'd like to make is on the new city park and how the process came about. It's a reflection of our multi-year collaboration with the city. I'd like to introduce Pat Murphy from SMP. He is a partner at the firm, a landscape firm, and he has very deep roots in the community, having been raised here and know this property extremely, extremely well. Okay, here's Pat.
Good evening, distinguished planning commissioners. I want to thank you very much for allowing us this time. I know 3 days of this is quite a testament to your stamina, but excellent job you're doing. Thank you. As Andrew mentioned, my name is Patrick Murphy. I grew up in La Habra for 22 years. Very proud of the city. Was very honored to be selected, my firm, to come back and work on this project. Our background includes the original Westridge project, as well as the golf course, working with the golf architect on that. I do golf, so I appreciate the comments made about the usability of the course and so forth. We do many of these types of projects in our 57 years in business. And I can attest with all of the clients we work with, Lennar is a very legitimate client. We've worked with them for over 38 years now. Very, very impressive group here. These people care about people. I know a lot of comments have been made, sadly, but again, we live in the God-given country here, very blessed to live where we are, to have a community like La Habra and all of the representatives that contribute to this project, as well as the service they provide. So thank you, everyone. I've heard all of the comments that have been directed at this project, all of them very worthy of consideration. But please know that after 5 years of working on this project, a lot of heart and soul has gone into it, and it's a very impressive project. The open space that's being considered for this project is immense. I know a lot of criticism is concerning the density of the project, but I know for a fact, after working and being very intimate on this project, riding motorcycles and bikes as a child over these hills, that the amount of open space dedicated to you, the public, is going to be quite significant, and quite an honor to be working on a project of this magnitude. This park that is before you right now, we have done a lot of studies. We've obviously most recently gone through the park, through this progress of the project itself, to note all the redeeming features that exist. We've done many grading studies working with a civil engineer who's one of the top in our industry, Unsacker. And we are in our attempt to design this park, have preserved as many of the natural features as possible, which include a lot of the mature trees and the topographic value of the site itself. There's a surround there with the slopes that provide a buffer to all the homes. Those are being retained. Again, the improvements to this park include a community center that will be dedicated to you, the public. As it stands right now, it's a private facility. Someone had made comments earlier about the use of this entire course. Although the parking lot is partially filled, not all of those people do play the golf course. They do use the community center, or what will be the community center. So the improvements to this by the architect that's on board on this thing will be terrific. This park includes all sorts of spaces that allow for public use, including bocce ball, event lawn areas. We have a pavilion for concerts. Where the cursor sits right now is a stage area. That particular area will allow for outdoor concerts and movies in the parks. These days, the way we're living with the pandemic, things are much different. We're not accustomed to being in closed quarters. This park will provide for that openness, safety, and security, a key aspect in any design of any community, especially parks. So this is well designed with consideration for all of those in mind. We have a major paseo that goes through the park that allows for the connectivity for all of the different uses. It includes a child's or younger children water park. We have tot lot structures in there. We have picnic pavilions, exercise courses, trail systems. Again, as landscape architects, we take great pride in working and manipulating the ground forms and landforms that allow for the usability of a park like this. So a lot of design effort has gone into this, looking at those different aspects to create these outdoor spaces that will provide you, the public, with quite an award-winning sort of situation here. This is a model example for what will be done in the future on other types of projects similar to golf courses like this. But again, Lennar has spent a lot of time. We've had the pleasure of working with them on vetting this, working very closely with the city and all of their representatives. Great input from them. Lennar has spared no cost in making sure that the demands or the requests made by the city are incorporated in this design here. There's a lot of opportunity that this park provides, and these are showing some interesting blow-ups in enlarged areas here that I'll present to you right now. Again, the event lawn is the oval lawn to the top of the screen. To the left of the community center, there is another event lawn that would really encompass the ability to have outdoor weddings, as well as a fireplace pavilion that allows for outdoor dining in the evening. Everything is about indoor and outdoor space when you look at landscape architecture. It's about enlarging and extending what the building provides for entertainment spaces. So this community center, which is going to be one of the tops in the industry, will allow for outdoor parties and functions. Now, with the pandemic, there's a lot of consideration for separation. Hence, this park is allowed for that and the future of what society provides. As we make our way up the Grand Pavilion or walkway through the park, the elevation difference starts to increase as we go into the park further, which allows for these topographic sort of outdoor spaces that we've designed here. So there are exercise courses and picnic pavilions. There's lots of separation. Typically in a park, you don't have that to consider. In something like this, that separation is very important, both from a safety as well as what we're going through at the moment right now. Walkways and trail systems, they're connected through the entirety of the Westridge project itself. We're utilizing a lot of the all of the existing golf cart paths, and those will be repaired as necessary, but those will be the connectivity that transforms and goes through the entirety of both this park, as well as connecting with the surrounding communities. And you can see in the imagery in the right or middle of the shot here, some of the play structures and the images that are provided. This park will be a state-of-the-art park that the city will be very proud of. It will also incorporate the most state-of-the-art water conservation systems. As we know, water is a precious commodity. We're not always going to be blessed with it. And therefore, this park will incorporate measures that allow for permanency. Oftentimes, you'll have situations where many of these parks that have been designed in the past utilize a lot of water, but this park will incorporate native plant material to give back to the flora and fauna, the natural of our character of the city, and allow for, again, preserving a lot of the trees that are existing on site of which we designed originally. So a great emphasis is made here as far as preservation, which is a huge consideration here. I believe there's one more slide there.
I think that's it.
Oh, no, I think that's it.
Oh,
Okay.
no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, that was just another enlargement. So again, going back to the fact, very proud of the city, 22 years spent in the city. It's an honor to be charged with working on this and working for you, the community. I used to march in the Corn Festival parade, playing the snare drum for the beginning when I was born in 1954. So a lot of history going back. Worked at the Big Deal Car Wash at Highway 39 and Beach Boulevard while going through school. This city means a lot to me, means a lot to all of these consultants working on it. It's an exceptional team. Our business has been around 57 years, and I couldn't say enough about this developer. Lennar is truly a people company that care about people. And I believe if you really start looking at the amount of work that's gone into this and need any questions answered, we will be there for you. So thank you very much.
Next, I'm going to introduce Greg Sanders. He's a partner at Nosterman legal firm representing as our legal counsel. I'd like to note that he is a current planning commissioner at Indian Wells. So he is in your position on matters such as this as they come up in Indian Wells. He also grew up in Anaheim as well. He will be talking about the CFD and the claim that was made that the taxpayers may be at risk if the CFD is dissolved, and that also regarding the habitat conservation area in maintenance as well. He will also talk about the traffic studies. Here's Greg.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate the introduction. As Andrew said, my name is Greg Sanders. I'm counsel for Lennar on this project. And as Andrew also said, I'm a planning commissioner in Indian Wells. And so I feel your pain. You know, I have sat on the other side of the dais, on the side that you're sitting on, many times, listening to presentations on primarily tourist-oriented projects for Indian Wells, but nonetheless projects with similar impacts. And as a planning commissioner, I like to keep in mind an old phrase. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. So let's talk about the facts for a few moments. With respect to the Community Facilities District, the statement was made that somehow the Rancho La Habra Homeowners Association can dissolve the Community Facilities District, leaving the La Habra taxpayers liable for the debt. I want you to know that cannot happen. A Community Facilities District is a separate legal entity, separate and apart from the city. It's governed by the city council, but as a legal entity, it really has nothing to do with the city. When a CFD is formed, as a general rule, bonds are sold to either finance certain infrastructure that is affiliated with a project like this, or to acquire infrastructure that has already been built. And those bonds are secured by only one thing, and that is a lien on the land owned by the individual homeowners. What you have in front of you is a typical boilerplate paragraph from a bond indenture for Community Facilities District bonds. And as you can read, neither the faith and credit nor the taxing power of the authority, that's the city, the state of California, or any other political subdivision is pledged to the payment of the principal and the interest on the bonds. So only the property within the subdivision, within the project, is used to secure the bonds, and that is the only security that is provided for those bonds. So if there's a default on payment of bonds, the bondholders can only go against the property that is the security for those bonds. Okay, let's talk about the conservation area maintenance obligation for a moment. We have worked in a very collaborative process with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and with the city to mitigate for the loss of the deed restricted conservation area within the confines of the project. And CDFW is now very supportive of the approach taken in the environmental impact report for mitigating the loss of that conservation area. The conservation area, the new conservation area, will be off-site, and the taxpayers of La Habra will not be obligated to pay for the maintenance of that new conservation area. What will happen, which is typical of arrangements like this, Lennar will be required to provide an endowment which will be used for perpetual maintenance of the property. So the taxpayers will not be on the hook for maintenance of the new conservation area. Let's go on to the next slide. The statement was made that somehow Lennar will receive a refund of fees, in lieu fees that are paid to mitigate traffic impacts at traffic intersections that are outside the city limits. That's simply not a true statement. To demonstrate Lennar's willingness to forego those funds, Lennar is willing to accept a contractual provision in the development agreement that whatever rights that Lennar might have to refund of those traffic mitigation fees, Lennar will not accept it, cannot accept it, and the city may keep it for use for the intended traffic mitigation. So there will be no refund to Lennar of any of the traffic mitigation fees that are paid, including traffic mitigation fees for traffic impacts outside of the city. Let's go on to the next slide. The other night, Joe Faust made the statement that the use of LOS, or level of service, is not an appropriate analytical tool to evaluate traffic impacts for this project. I know Joe Faust. I can't say that he's a close personal friend, but I do know him. And I respect him. Joe Faust is a pioneer in the traffic engineering field. So when he has something to say about traffic impacts, I pay close attention. The statement that Joe made about use of LOS as the analytical tool in the traffic studies for the Rancho La Habra EIR is not a traffic engineering statement. In fact, it's really a legal statement. Let me explain. This EIR was started several years ago. And like a lot of EIRs for complex projects like this one, they take a long, long time to complete. Well, during the evolution of this environmental impact report, the state began evaluating a new process for evaluation of traffic impacts, and the state embarked on the use of a new analytical tool called VMT, Vehicle Miles Traveled. Now, VMT is not really a traffic analytical tool. What VMT is a greenhouse gas emissions analytical tool. The overarching policy of the state is not so much now focused on traffic as it is in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So as a result of this evolution to VMT, the state decided that effective July the 1st, 2020, VMT will be the analytical tool used for analyzing traffic. And the state also provided, through the Office of Planning and Research and incorporated into the CEQA guidelines, a provision that says if an EIR was in progress, and if the EIR was put out for circulation before July the 1st, 2020, and if that EIR used level of service as the analytical tool for evaluating traffic impacts, then that EIR may be completed and it can be certified with the LOS analytical tool as the device used to measure traffic impacts. And in the case of the Rancho La Habra EIR, the traffic impacts were evaluated not just once, but twice. The EIR was circulated for public review with the first traffic study in it using LOS as the analytical tool. Subsequently, the traffic study was done again to update it. That portion of the EIR, along with some others that included biology and a few other things, the traffic section of the EIR was recirculated. That recirculation was completed all before July the 1st, 2020. So the law, the state, including the Office of Planning and Research, everybody recognizes that level of service is the proper analytical tool for this project. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be pleased to respond to any questions you have. Andrew?
On the next two topics of the fiscal impact analysis and public benefits, I would like to have Gary Jones, who's the VP of Land Acquisition, and he's been intimately involved in the financial matters as it affects this development. Here's Gary.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm a little different here. I'm not an expert in the field and not quoted in the EIR, but I am filling in for experts who couldn't make it tonight. So bear with me. I'm going to go high level instead of into the details that you've heard from the other consultants. And first of all, there's a comment. I heard several comments of the project draining resources from the city. I can tell you that from right at the beginning, as I was involved with this, the city made it very clear. Any project that we proposed, there's strong desire to have a strong fiscal impact and not to drain any resources. And we took that and as a goal of ours, and in fact, we're proud of it. So it's been analyzed multiple times over the years as different requirements and different requests from the city has had. So the numbers have fluctuated somewhat, and the numbers you see on here right now were the last items that were studied in the summer, and that's what was incorporated in the staff report. So the fiscal impact study was again reviewed by multiple consultants, including the city's consultant, MBS. And the fiscal impact studies, they take into account all the revenues and most importantly, to address the comments, the expenses from the police and fire department. And that's all heavy on everybody's mind, of course, today. Gross annual city revenues are estimated at $1.17 million. And the city expenses are estimated about $820,000. And of that, they're allocating $380,000 in fire to the police department and the fire department, $230,000. And then various city services, obviously, is around $200,000. As you see, the net income is over $350,000 a year. So that's what we talk about as proud as the long-term legacy is the benefits of the project, the fiscal benefits to the city far outweigh the costs. The reason we quote a lot of times what the gross revenue is there's no requirement from CEQA or that to use general funds towards certain projects. So in this case, it's up to the city manager and the city council to decide what they use their expenses on. There's no need to build a new fire station. There's no need to build a new police station. There's no need to add on to City Hall for this project. Nobody's overwhelmed. So the $1.17 million could be used at the direction of city manager and the council. Right now, what they've done, which we agree with, is use what the average cost is for the residents for these services and applied it to the number of residents that are expected to live here. And that's how they came up with the allocation of the costs. So again, we're very proud that we've got a positive fiscal impact of $350,000. Next slide. We heard another comment and a question that I've heard on several of the planning commissioners. It's a good one, I think. The question was, is this project paying its fair share of public benefits? And that was another thing that we've taken into account. There's got to be a reason why the public would want this and why it's being presented right now for collaboration or consideration for the planning commission and the council. We heard early on that there was a great demand for public park space. The golf course is being used by a fairly narrow band of people, although Pat likes golf, I like golf. Most of the residents where I live and most of the residents of La Habra are not golfers. And the thought was, if there's going to be a change, it needs to be inclusive for more folks to use and not be charged for it. So we embraced that and said, we're going to go all in on the parks. So that's what we heard over and over again. We want parks, we want amenities, we want exercise, we want trails. We know trails is the #1 request of residents throughout our market. I live in San Clemente. The public trail along the beach is by far the biggest benefit in San Clemente. And here we thought the same thing. We had the opportunity to do the same thing. Let's have a trail in the current golf paths and have a 4.5 miles or 4.2 miles of trails that go through and look at the views and enjoy the whole scenery and the whole park that's up there. So we're really proud of that. Our benefits package has been estimated in the staff report at over $40 million. And I'll go through that in just a minute, but $40 million is a hefty, hefty number. That's over $90,000 per home. The benefit package has been, like we said, at $40 million. And what we mentioned earlier is there's a question of, where's items for X or Y? Where's affordable housing? So I want to go through that on the next slide and address that comment. Again, when the question was brought up, is the project paying its fair share? I thought it might be, there's a project that was mentioned just recently that said, hey, we're paying $10,000 per home for affordable housing. Where's this project? It's a legitimate question. So it made me think, what was the last 2 projects in the city of La Habra? And let's do a comparison and see how this compares. So what you have here is the Rancho La Habra general plan amendment and this zone change, and 2 other general plan amendments and zone change. And let's see how what their project requirements are. And I think it's fairly overwhelming here. You see, again, we went all in on the parks. We have tremendous amount of amenities at tremendous cost and tremendous dedications, and that's $37 million per the city staff report. Our DA fee is $1.5 million, and affordable housing is $1 million. Again, we thought $1 million was double what was done before, so we thought that was a number that might be appropriate. It is there. So how does that compare to the other projects? As you see, we're at $40 million, and the other projects on here were maybe $1 million and $2.5 million. So, that's something I'd like to just the council to consider. I think one of the other comments, and it was a fair one and a good one, was you need to look at what's the per unit. Obviously, this project has more homes than the current one that was mentioned. Fairly close to 335. You can't see that on the screen there. I don't know if you can move that over, but the Fairfield Civic Plan was 335 homes. So what I did was just put up a number of what's the contribution per home per category. And I think the point to be made is that, again, we went with what we thought that we heard that was what the city would like to see from our input, which was going heavy and all in on the parks. And you saw all the amenities that we're building on there. I was over $84,000 per home site for park contribution. And you can see how that compares to the other. We had impact fees and affordable housing fees. So yes, the per unit on home and affordable may not be the same as the recent zone change that you see there, but the magnitude of $90,000 versus 13 is significant in our mind. And if the mix isn't right, I think Andrew said earlier on Monday night, we're certainly appreciate the input, and that's what this process is for the Planning Commission and City Council to make suggestions and see desires of what they like. So if they want to change up that $40 million of benefits or the $90,000 per home, and they'd like to see more for affordable housing, we're certainly open to that discussion, and I made that clear with staff as we've gone through it. This is our suggestion. Again, certainly more than happy to change the allocation and do what's the what's the desire of the city. So in the end, I know from Lennard's perspective and my perspective, we feel this is a robust package, and we're really proud to present what benefits we have. And I'll leave it up to the public and to the commission to see if we're playing our fair share. But to me, again, we're really proud of what our contributions are. The other last point is obviously the city made it very clear that they want to see a large park. They want it open to the public. They don't want anybody paying for it, and they don't want anybody in the city paying for it. So the park that we're giving you, the city, none of the city residents are paying for any of the amenities in this package. And that's not true everywhere else in the city. So that's the conclusion. I hope you agree with my thoughts on that, but leave it for your consideration. Thank you.
That concludes our rebuttal argument. We certainly appreciate this opportunity to make or incorporate additional clarifications. And we are open to any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Hand, thank you very much for that. And thanks to your staff for a good presentation. We're very appreciative. Thank you, sir. And with that, this concludes all the comments related to the project that the Planning Commission will consider. And at this time, I officially declare the public hearing will be closed. And right now, I believe staff has got some information with regard to correspondence that they would like to address.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Andrew Ho, Director of Community Development. Staff would like to respond to some of the correspondences and testimony received during the last 3 days. I will turn it over now to Lloyd Zola from Metis, who prepared the EIR to address the commission on that matter. Lloyd, take it away.
Thank you. There have been questions about traffic mitigation and how they work how traffic mitigation would work in other cities or would work on a Caltrans facility. And you did hear the applicant talk about not having money returned to them. What I wanted to point out first is that there are a series of mitigation measures for traffic impacts because we did address traffic in the EIR. Those mitigation measures can be found in the recirculated draft EIR in Chapter 8, the Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program, starting on page 8-13. And that shows the various fair share payments that the applicant would be required to make and the intersections and improvements for which those fair shares would be provided. There was also a letter that came in a few days ago from the city of Buena Park asking for coordination with the city regarding determination of fair share dollar amounts and percentages upon which the fair share would be based. Those are not put in the environmental impact report itself, and that has been the standard practice throughout the state for at least 10 years now. The reason that the fair share percentages and dollar amounts are fixed at the time the fees are to be paid is back more than 10 years ago when they used to be put in the EIRs. You've got the lag time between doing that analysis and the time of the EIR actually being certified. Then it's a year to 2 years to 5 years later that the mitigation is actually provided. And what cities throughout the state found is that the mitigation numbers in the EIRs were showing up with shortfalls. And the numbers that were predicted were coming up short. So that is why the mitigation measure is based on a performance standard, which is the payment to the fair share with the fee to be fixed at the time that the fees are to be paid based on engineering design of the improvements at the time. There were also comments regarding California Department of Fish and Wildlife that ranged from their recitation or a reminder of their January letter where they raised a series of concerns on the draft EIR and its mitigation program to comments made earlier in the applicant's rebuttal. What I do want to point out is that in your record, there is an August 19th email from Jesse Lane of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife that concurs with the mitigation requirements set forth in the final EIR. And that is the wording used in her letter And so those mitigation measures can be found in Chapter 8 of the recirculated draft EIR. One issue that had been raised by California Department of Fish and Wildlife that is also addressed in the final EIR is the trail location in the western portion of the site. Going back to Monday night, the applicant showed a development plan, and that included the trail going along the current golf cart path around the exterior boundary of the conservation area in the western portion of the site. Based on discussions with California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and in order to address potential impacts of trail users on wildlife within that conservation area, the trail location should be along the western or the eastern portion of the conservation area, essentially along the boundary between the conservation area and the development portion of the site. That will reduce potential impacts from trail users on wildlife in that within the conservation area. There also was a letter regarding mitigation measures submitted by Jonathan Shardlow, who spoke, I believe it was Monday night. He referred to a letter. That letter raises issues regarding performance standards and mitigation measures. And having reviewed that letter along with acting counsel as well as CEQA counsel, we all agree that the mitigation measures set forth in the EIR do in fact contain appropriate performance standards, and the only places that the phrases "where feasible" are used, which was one of the issues, are appropriate uses of that. The city determines what is feasible, and there is adequate information provided in those mitigation measures to address feasibility. There have been comments about soil management and contamination on the site that were addressed a lot in public comments and briefly in the applicant's presentation, and I would like to expand on the situation. The draft EIR, or starting on page 3.12-23, addresses the issue of site contamination. When the original La Habra Hills specific plan was built and the golf course was built, there were approximately 426,000 cubic yards of contaminated soils requiring remediation within the original La Habra Hills specific plan. The remediation that was accomplished under the direction of the Regional Water Quality Control Board and the Orange County Health Agency as part of that construction of the golf course and La Habra Hills involved burying that that contaminated soil, which is contaminated with petroleum, primarily crude oil, but burying that within the site and then constructing a clean cap over that area. It is buried within 3 areas within the existing golf course. The depth at which those soils were buried and the reason they were buried is to prevent human contact with the contaminated soil. That is a standard method of addressing, dealing with remediation of soil contamination with petroleum product or crude oil and the heavy petroleum that it was contaminated with. The depth at which the contaminated soils were buried was adequate to prevent human contact for a golf course. It was not an adequate depth to allow for construction of residential above the buried contaminated soil. So what the applicant is proposing is to is to dig up the contaminated soil, rebury it at a depth appropriate for residential development. That is all described in the, their plan is described in the project description in the recirculated draft EIR, and the impacts are also addressed in the draft EIR starting on page 312-23. Figures, EIR figures, recirculated draft EIR figures 2-25, or on page 2-25, there are, is that description. There are two figures, 2-6 and 2-7 in the recirculated draft that show the current location of the soils, where they are buried, and where they will be reburied, figures 2-6 and 2-7. The basic methods that will be used to address safety of digging them up and reburial of those are contained in an approved soil management plan that is contained in Appendix M, as in man, of the draft EIR. When I say approved, the regulatory authority for managing those soils rests with the Orange County Health Agency. And so you will see the regulatory plan that was approved by the Orange County Health Agency in Appendix M. It consists of a soil management plan and an addendum to that plan. What we found in doing the environmental impact report was, although there is that list of methods that will be used to protect the public, and those methods are summarized in the final EIR, volume 3 of the final EIR, in response to master comment number 11. But what we did not find was evidence that a health risk assessment had been prepared. So even though there is an approved plan, there is a mitigation measure in the hazards and hazardous materials section requiring confirmation that the methodology approved by the Orange County Health Agency would not address or not create a significant health risk, and only after it is demonstrated that the health risk would not be significant would the city issue building permit or issue a grading permit. So the soils are now buried beneath the surface, beneath the ground surface to prevent human contact. There would be human contact during the time that the soils are dug up before they are reburied. But the approved plan by the Orange County Health Authority is designed to prevent human contact with those contaminated soils. The last issue I wanted to discuss tonight was geotechnical and slope stability. There was a letter submitted that was referred to, I believe it was last night, from the firm of Cotton Shires. That is part of the final EIR, and it is presented just before page 2-55 in volume 3 of the final EIR. They did, and that Cotton Shires letter correctly pointed out that there would be an issue during grading because there is an old landslide on the existing slope that has a key buttress at the bottom of the slope to keep the slope stable. That key buttress would be removed during site grading. And so the issue is addressed in the final EIR. There is an additional mitigation measure requiring setting requirements for grading and stability to ensure stability of the slope when that key buttress is removed. That mitigation measure is included in the mitigation monitoring plan as mitigation measure GEO-1.4B as in boy. And that would conclude my comments unless the attorneys have anything to add. Thank you.
Do we have any additional comments or questions from either staff or council?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Mr. Zola, thank you very much. That was very informative. And we finally reach, my fellow commissioners, that long-awaited time where we shall begin to deliberate and share our thoughts on all of the various land use entitlements and synthesize all the information we've absorbed through public comments and testimony over the last 3 days. And with that in mind, I'm going to kick it off. I want to say that one quick comment with regard to Mr. Hand's statement about collaboration with the city, which is absolutely true. I think the point I want to make very briefly is that anytime an applicant makes any kind of an application with the city, it's by definition a collaborative arrangement. The city is absolutely required to process these applications in an expeditious and in a very deliberate way. So the timing is not something that is subjective. I know some folks said, well, why are we rushing this? Or others might feel, why did they delay it? And what is it with the timing? The timing is exactly what it is. The city does the best it can in the time allotted, and they don't want to have the applicant feel like there's any obstruction or any delay that's not absolutely rational and well explained. And on the other hand, we want everyone else to realize that there is a process that has to be followed, and then there's major consequences if those processes are not followed to the nth degree. So there's that. One final thing too about city pride. I want to say this just very briefly about the folks that spoke, the passion, the depth and breadth of emotion that they expressed in their comments. You know, we do call it a caring community, but it is remarkable in this kind of a venue when you actually hear folks talk about the way they feel about their city. For so many people out there, the place where they live is simply the place where they live. And it's so clear to me after listening to everybody that La Habra does mean something far more significant to them. There is a tremendous amount of pride out there. The stakeholders take true ownership of the city, and and it concerns them greatly when there's any potential transformation like this at stake. So I want to thank them and tell them that I was moved by, again, that raw emotion and that passion. So now let me say just a couple positive things about the Rancho La Habra proposal. You know, overall, I feel this is a beautifully designed project. The homes themselves are very attractive. I like very much how each neighborhood has its own pool and amenities. I personally feel that the dedications of land to the city for the park area and the community center and all the other features provide a high degree of value. As it was mentioned, the value can be estimated as high as $40 million. Nobody can argue that this aspect wouldn't be a significant benefit for the whole city. And finally, I like how the project is very proportional within the proposed specific plan. That's a good thing. But we also need to talk about proportionality within the city of La Habra itself, and not just the benefits enjoyed by the roughly 1,300 new residents, but the impacts made on the other 62,000 folks who live in La Habra. What we were talking about here is the permanent loss of about 64 acres of currently zoned land for open space. And I understand the golf course is privately owned, but that nonetheless, it's open to the public. All 150 acres are theoretically open to the public. And I understand that around 30% of the open space will be preserved, but we are still being asked to permanently transform most of the open space to residential. So as the AR notes, the new dominant aesthetic of the entire project will be housing, and that is a huge step. And there are complicated issues. There's nothing black or white about this project at all. It's all kind of shades of gray. I don't personally feel that all open space is sacrosanct and that no changes can ever be made. But the huge challenge here before this commission is to determine whether this project at this time in this place is, and this is a planning term, the highest best use of this property. So we take a look briefly at the impacts imparted to the rest of the city. We know that with this project, a couple things. A, we know we're not conforming to the goals presented in the new general plan. B, we know the project conflicts with AQMD standards for greenhouse gas emissions. C, we know the project conflicts with the Southern California Association of Governments goals and policies. We know that the California Department of Fish and Wildlife has not yet entered into complete agreements with the applicant over biological impacts. And then finally, we have to acknowledge the elephant in the room, and that is overwhelmingly the traffic situation. If you could pick this whole project up and put it someplace else, especially if it was already zoned R1, it would look a lot better doing a cost-benefit analysis. But that's not what we have here. Instead, we have a project that will, in fact, add 4,347 vehicle trips per day to an area already saturated with traffic. That's a huge problem, especially since many of the mitigation measures will be completely insufficient. And it's one thing to impose 5 to 6 years of construction burdens on those who live and work in the area. But then after that, the traffic is guaranteed to only get worse. It's kind of an old-fashioned project in a sense here, in that the new population will be driving their own cars. There's no transportation node or mass transit solution that will ever likely bring those traffic impacts down. And overall, I wish there would have been better scoping on this project. Some of the alternatives, such as even the 9-hole golf course and a smaller number of homes, could have brought traffic impacts to beneath these critical thresholds. But that's not what we have here. Instead, what we have is the challenge of balancing and weighing the multiple benefits and multiple negative impacts this project would create. It's very difficult. I did not prejudge this proposal. I have listened carefully, as have all my colleagues, to all the reports and comments. So now I come back to what I said. All things considered, does this project at this time, at this size, at this place, represent the highest, best use of this land? And to that, my answer is no. Commissioner Bernier, please.
Good evening. I'm going to yield and wait till the end. I definitely feel I've said a lot during this testimony, so I hand my comments back over to you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Well, I wouldn't say you said too much, Commissioner Bernier, but if you said what you wanted to say, then that's fine. We will proceed to Commissioner Munoz.
I think Chairman Nazarian said a lot of good points on the project itself. And also, you know, I'm definitely very, I applaud the community for coming out, voicing their opinion. It really goes to show, you know, how we are a caring community, but also we value certain things here in the community. 3 things that I definitely saw were density, open space, and overall affordability. And in looking at those 3 things as far as issues and looking at how the project is proposed based off of now and how it relates to our existing conditions, and looking at that project, you know, I don't feel it's a good balance in having those 3 as of right now. Just like Chairman said, I wish that the developer would have looked at different options and kind of having that appropriate balance in both density, open space, and affordability. You know, there are many factors in there. You know, Beach Boulevard is a state route. You know, it is congested, yes, but nonetheless, it is a major corridor in which can definitely support higher density within that corridor itself. So looking at different alternatives in which having that balance and having open space, affordability within the project itself, and then also still having some type of density. The community is going to change. We're definitely going to see more change in the coming years, especially with upcoming housing element, which is a great time that I tell the community stakeholders and the residents to really voice your opinion to dictate how we want to grow. You know, making sure that wherever we want additional densities, it's in the right direction. Because unfortunately, the state legislation is coming down with far more information and more bills that at one point we might not have as much control as we want. So I definitely urge everyone to be part of that process, because we are looking at an additional 800 units overall. So as of right now, based off of the way that the project has been submitted, I would vote no on this project.
Thank you, Commissioner Munoz. Vice Chair Manley, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think that what I agree with the most that you said, Chair Nazarian, was the fact that this is certainly not black and white. I think I can speak for staff, the rest of the commission, and the community. It's been a long 3 days. It's been a long several years for the community in support of the project and in opposition of the project. And I know certainly it's been a long 3 years for city staff as well. I would be supportive of the general plan amendment
However, my support for this particular project may be dependent on some modifications to the plan, which I'll discuss shortly. You know, we've heard at length about how golf play is down nationwide and golf courses are struggling or closing as a result. And most of this hearing, you know, to me didn't seem like it was centered on the closing of the golf course as much as it was centered on the rezoning of open space and other concerns with the development. In addition to golf play being down, I think something that we have to recognize from a planning perspective is that a housing crisis exists, especially in California. And a project like the one being proposed would help address the crisis and also help the city try to meet its regional housing obligations. From a land use perspective, right, as a commission just approaching this from a land use perspective, I believe this project is consistent with elements of the general plan. I believe that is one of the most integral parts of our role as a commission. The general plan amendment would not create any disjointed land use patterns, as the existing Westridge residential community would be located adjacent to the south of the proposed Rancho La Habra residential community. The proposed amendment and project would also result in the city achieving its goal of providing 2.5 acres of public park per 1,000 residents. Currently, the city does not reach that goal and has no plans prepared to do so. This proposed project would exceed that goal. Now, if approved, we know that the project would generate community benefits totaling over $40 million or up to $40 million. And we could discuss the CFD as we have substantially already and how those benefits would be funded, but ultimately the formation of the proposed CFD isn't something that I think we're here to recommend or not recommend with the project tonight. Now, we've heard a lot of opposition to the project for different reasons, and we've also received significant amount of support for the project. One thing to note, I think, as Commissioner Bernier diligently addressed on Monday evening, there has been support for the project from residents outside of the La Habra community and on form letters. However, just today, we received support for the project from residents of La Habra Heights, Whittier, and surrounding cities. So I think it's fair to say that there's been support and lack of support for the project from both within the community and outside of the community. As a matter of fact, for the record, today, the commission received an email from city staff citing emails in opposition to the project. Within that document were emails in support of the project. I think one of those emails came from David Ross, who I think Marie Laviaga mentioned earlier this evening, his letter, and he's a resident of the Westridge community. And his support for the project had some really interesting notes in it about how the process has ran from his point of view as a resident there in the community. And so I think that is something that the commission needs to consider. We've heard many concerns from the community on both sides. One concern, has been that this would be a short-term solution to a long-term problem for the city. In many ways, I would respectfully disagree. We heard from people in the community who love our city, and that's admirable. Many of these people talked about their children growing up here in the community. I have several children myself, raising them here in the city, so I can certainly share those sentiments. Or, we had people discuss how they themselves were born here, have lived here for many, many, many years. We have to acknowledge, though, that these children that we're referring to in many cases, when they grow up and when they have desires to stay here in their beloved La Habra community, as they grow and they begin the families of their own, where do they go? This project would create 125 multifamily dwellings with a price point around $609,000. These 125 residences range in size from 1,600 square feet to a little over 2,000 square feet. I think it's important for the commission to note Do you know how many residences there are in La Habra that are for sale today that are over 1,600 square feet and under $650,000? 2. Do you know why? Of course you do. We have a housing crisis. Now, a household making $80,000 roughly could probably qualify to purchase one of those homes. So on some scale, we're not talking about luxurious homes. Sure, there's homes in the development valued at upwards of $1 million, but there's many that are quite affordable. According to the US Census, the median household income in La Habra from 2014 to 18 was about $76,000. Somebody like that, maybe living in the community as a police officer, a firefighter, a teacher, with a household income around $80,000, would be able to afford a residence such as those in Rancho La Habra. Meanwhile, at this time, that doesn't exist as an opportunity for them. Now, according to the EIR, the proposed project would generate approximately 4,000 additional vehicle trips during AM and PM peak hours, more than the golf course would. Now, at a glance, and I think frankly without much context, that number could seem high. But it's important to note that that represents an increase of approximately 3 to 4% at various intersections within the city. According to estimates, by the California Department of Finance, California's population grew by 7.3% from 2010 to 2019. To me, it seems natural that as population grows, traffic's going to increase. It may not be something that, frankly, anybody is appreciative of or enjoys, but I think to look at our community that we consider a caring community, a community that we love, and a community that we're happy to be a part of, and we've been a part of for so many years, and to look at that community as a community that's growing, and that's a beautiful thing. And with some growth, may come a little bit more traffic. 3 to 4% to me, contextually, I think that's pretty significant to kind of understand. The project would result, as we know, in the dedication of the community center that would be renovated by the developer, and that would be for public use. It would provide $1.5 million in funding for the city council to use for community programs and projects and needs, and would provide $1 million to be used in support for future affordable housing developments in the community. But here's where I think I'd like to see some modifications to the plan. As attractive as maybe those community benefits would be, I think it's definitely been stated, and I think even fellow commissioners have maybe voiced some agreement to this. I think the community benefits in terms of affordable housing provided are not significant enough. I would like to see more of the developed units in the project be a mix of smaller units and at a lower price point. I think I've made that point very clear that there's families living in our community, living in surrounding communities who desire to be a part of La Habra. As a matter of fact, I think there's probably a lot of residents in support or opposition of the project who know somebody who would love to live here. There's nowhere for them to go. And so we just consider ourselves fortunate because the timing was better for us. And as a city like La Habra strives to plan and build and grow and develop into the future, I think that crisis is real. And I think that's something that we have to acknowledge. So I'd like to discuss the possibility of a modification to the proposed project to include more of such units, and would certainly be open to any of my fellow commissioners that would like to have a discussion about that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Manley, very much for that. And I think we can discuss that. I think what I'd like to do now is let's move on for the time being to Commissioner Powell for his comments, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, community. It has been a very interesting 3 days. As my colleagues know, I'm both the oldest member of the commission as well as the senior member of the commission currently serving. And so I've been a part of, over the last almost 7.5 years, of many of the projects that have come forward within the community. And I have a comment to begin with before I get specifically to the project. And one of the things that I just wanted to touch on and share with our community and all of those that are listening. During my 7.5 years plus, so to speak, on this commission, I was aware of this project some time ago, long before Andrew Ho became our director. I served under a previous, served with a previous director. There were other staff members that were involved. And I've served under a number of different council persons, both currently and prior. And one of the comments that really troubled me during the public testimony was that this project was a done deal, that there were issues of integrity involving public officials, or thought to be that sort of conceptual side. And I could tell you that in this 7+ years of service, I've never once had a city council member, city manager, staff member ever come to me and urge me to vote on any project in any specific way, but rather to encourage me to think for myself and think based upon the relevant facts that are presented to the commission, both in staff reports, both in testimony, both in on-site visits that many of us make to the areas in which we go. I am particularly thankful that this council, both past and present, in my personal opinion, is of such a high integrity. I have confidence that they will do the right thing in matters given before them. I think they embrace the concept of a caring community. Secondly, I've served with numbers of commissioners. All of the commissioners that are serving have come after me, but I've served with their colleagues before that. And they too, none of these commissioners that you see before you has asked me to vote a certain way or ask me how I feel or anything. It's been from my perspective, the highest level of integrity. And I think that the point that was made is that we're just citizens. We're volunteer citizens trying to assess and determine what is best for this particular area and overall what's best for our community. Because I've lived here for so long, I certainly can remember the before Westridge period. I remember the oil wells. I remember Beach Boulevard and Motorcycle Hill and Giovanni's Pizza and going up in the hills. And before that, further down, Bellhurst and the bankruptcy of Bellhurst Homes, and then ultimately the reopening of Bellhurst. And then on the boulevard on Imperial Highway, we had our own Brea Mall. Buffum's and Bullock's were the two anchor stores on either end that were dynamic. So people came from all over. And of course, things change and things have changed and they continue to change. I agree with my colleague Jason with respect to the traffic. We have known for some period of time that the majority of our traffic problems within the city, whether it be Harbor, or whether it be Lambert, whether it be Imperial, whether it be Beach Boulevard, the majority of those are cut through traffic. We unfortunately sit at the pinnacle of people trying to get to the 5, the 57, or the 60, or the 90 freeway, or to get into the city. I think it's tough. I certainly can remember times on Whittier Boulevard where traffic wasn't as bad, but Caltrans is not always in our control, and all the work that they have done and are doing now, even at as we look at Beach Boulevard and around, we know that Caltrans has worked on signal synchronization, certainly on Imperial and on Highway 39 or Whittier Boulevard. So we know that people of good faith and good works are trying their best to mediate what has happened and what is happening and what's going to continue to happen. I agree with my colleague, Jason, that there is a housing shortage. It is simply a fact that housing is needed, and particularly affordable housing is needed for the households in our city to be so limited to such desirable residents who want to live here or live here and want to buy in the area is really a sad commentary on the costs. And it's not getting better in terms of how that is working. I'm troubled. I'm troubled by the build-out period of time. I'm troubled by the 6-year period of time and what that site will look like during the time. At what point the golf course ultimately closes, should this pass. Once it closes, what's that going to look like? What does that? We've seen the timeline. We can see how in the staff report as well as in the EIR, sort of the sequential building of the property, the grading and the construction and the phasing of those things. I'm troubled by the hazardous materials. I understand that the work that was done during the original construction was 1990 remediation. The area of the driving range was one of the areas that I understand was capped as they talk about capping. And so I think that's a troubling factor to deal with, and troubling in terms of how that remediation occurs in a safe and effective way for both the residents living in the area now above the project, and certainly for those on Sandalwood and Sandalwood over to Euclid, and how that occurs. Sadly, the cut-through traffic from Imperial Middle School, the comments that were made about that. There's so many dynamic areas where cut-through traffic has really become a dynamic problem. I don't know how to fix that. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer when it comes to all of these issues, and I just acknowledge that. I'm just not sure. In neighborhoods throughout the city, whether it be in the north or whether it be off of Whittier Boulevard at the city limits on Valley Home, all of these areas, there's been traffic remediation, there's been traffic calming, and I'm not even sure that really even works anymore because people through WAS or whatever find alternate routes to divert from the traffic, and they go into the community neighborhoods. And I don't know if we can ever solve that. I just don't think we can. It disappoints me that that is going on, particularly Harbor Boulevard coming over the hill, and with the homes that may be built in Brea and come down Pathfinder and make their way onto Harbor Boulevard and then access Fullerton or Brea or on further down, perhaps even to Anaheim. I think it's cut through traffic is a major issue. And absent making every community a gated community, I don't know how to do that. I'm just not smart enough to to figure out that maybe our traffic engineers have worked on it better before, but I've listened to these studies and I've gone to classes every year during this 7 years to just study traffic calming and traffic mediation. And I just don't know how cut through traffic and the fact that we're at a point where people drive through our community to get from point A to point B, and we're the thoroughfare, so to speak. And I don't know how to fix that. I just don't know how to fix it. So with that being said, I'm in partial agreement with Jason in terms of affordable housing. I'm thinking that that would be something that we perhaps should consider further. But absent that that component and some greater assurance in terms of the scheduling and the toxic waste removal, and the Orange County Health Authority having ultimately to have to sign off on that, it becomes a dynamic issue and a tough decision to make. And absent some agreeable solutions on that, I would have to depart on that, and I would not be able to support this project to the degree that it's presented to us tonight, based upon the factors that I have outlined. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would yield back my time.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell, very much for those insightful remarks. My inclination at this point actually is to maybe poll my colleagues and see to what extent, if any, there's support for the idea of at some point making a modified motion with a particular amendment. But what I'd like to do real quick is digress to Sarita and Andrew too, for that matter, because I see a couple ways of proceeding here. We could either run through the motions as they're written, and then depending upon how that works out, then Jason could make a separate motion with an amendment. And if he gets a second, we could vote on that. Or maybe there's another alternative, but I want to make sure we handle it the right way. So could somebody please advise me on that?
Darren, this is Andrew. Before we move on to that, would the commission want to recognize Commissioner Bernier for her input on the project?
Well, we did, and she yielded. She said she talked too much already, which I thoroughly disagree with. But unless she wants to, is she ready now? Or
Yeah.
Michelle, did you say something?
I wanted to wait till the end. I'm Commissioner Bernier, because I don't know if you guys know, but we are covered by the Brown Act. And I don't know if you guys know what that means. We cannot talk about this project amongst us commissioners. So I really wanted to hear the sentiments of my fellow commissioners, and I'm really happy to hear each one of their opinions, since I can't hear that generally. I agree with Manley. I think that we definitely need affordable housing, as well as Manuel brought it up. There's no way we're going to be able to get around that. We are going to be tasked with this. This is my second go around, so it'll be 4 more years, and this will come up again. We will have to we will be tasked with whether we're going to build, and if it's not this project, it's going to be another. But we all know that there's affordable housing that definitely needs to be addressed. You know, we're not going to get around it. Same thing with Commissioner Powell, how he brought up traffic. Traffic's a hard thing. I've gone through many of these projects. This is my 5th year. We look at these, we tear them apart. We really analyze what we need in the community. And, this is our job, looking at the environment, looking at, where it's going to be built, the zoning, so we don't take this lightly. And yes, we are all residents, and there's a few of us that have lived here for several decades. That being said, I think there is room where this could be better, but I agree with my commissioners, Powell and Manuel. I have a hard time with the environmental impact of this. I really do. So as I stand now, because of that portion, my answer has to be no.
All right, Commissioner Bernier, thank you very much. And I'm sorry if I didn't come back to you at the end of Jerry's.
No worries.
I wasn't clear on the idea of whether you were yielding because you didn't want to say anything or because you wanted to say it at a different time. So sorry about that.
No problem.
So, okay, so it's back to Andrew and perhaps Sarita in terms of how we best proceed.
Well,
Sarita, you wanna
Chair-
take this? Oh,
sure.
go ahead, Sarita. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Well, Chair, what I was hearing from Vice Chair Manley was a suggestion which I think would impact, and Andrew, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it would impact the specific plan adoption component, which would be to include a recommendation that the applicant modify the proposed specific plan in order to include more affordable housing units as part of the project. Would that be the appropriate document, Andrew?
Yes, I believe so. The other thing that we could do is summarize the commission's comments tonight and forward it to the council for consideration. It sounds like if the commission votes on the first item related to the general plan amendment, you know, the commission wouldn't be in a position to approve the Rancho La Habra specific plan or have any conditions imposed on it. So that's kind of the path I see it going down now.
Right.
What we would do from a staff perspective is incorporate the comments from the commission regarding the need for affordable housing and incorporate it into the staff report so that the council's aware of what was discussed and the commission's desire.
Let me ask
so
Vice Chair. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sarita.
So just to add, you know, if there is a sense, Mr. Ho's completely correct. You know, we would have to start off with the general plan amendment and vote on that. But if there is some form of consensus amongst the Planning Commission or appetite for possibly recommending approval for the project, should the applicant modify the project to include more affordable housing or make any other modifications that the commission would want, then that could be done at the time you come to that component of the entitlement. So, but obviously, if we can't get past, if there's a recommendation for denial of the general plan amendment, then you know there would be no opportunity to move past there. Logically, the commission, if you were to recommend denial of the general plan amendment, then you would also have to recommend denial of all of the other entitlements because they're dependent upon the general plan amendment.
Well, let me say this, and I can stand corrected if that's the case, but it sounds to me from deliberations that it looks like we likely have a majority that will want to deny the general plan amendment. So the question now is to Vice Chair Manley, if it would be sufficient in his view to incorporate his comments and recommendations with regard to affordable housing to City Council. And Jason, let me know if that would work for you or not.
I don't feel that we're there yet. I could be just hearing something differently, but I feel that based on what the rest of the commission has stated, that we might be able to discuss some modifications a little bit more and provide maybe even more clarity for the City Council.
All right, well, let's try this then. What I'm going to do is I'm going to roll call. I'm going to see where we stand on the notion of making amendments or placing conditions on the specific plan. And with the understanding that, you know, if for those who lack support for the general plan amendment, that may or may not work for them. And of course, the decision tree indicates that if you don't support the general plan amendment, we can't consider amendments to the specific plan. So I'll do it in the same order as before. Personally, I don't feel this is the right time, place, or project. I mean, I'm fully supportive of affordable housing. I think that we're going to have a lot of opportunities in the future to do our very best to encourage and support affordable housing in La Habra, but I wouldn't want to increase the density for this project one whit at any event. And I think that would certainly be the case with affordable housing, smaller units and this sort of thing. So if I were asked in terms of whether I would support making any amendments or modifications to the specific plan resolution, I would say no. And then I would go to Commissioner Bernier and ask if she would, with the understanding that she would have to vote yes on the general plan amendment, is she supportive then of entertaining a motion with regard to amendments on the specific plan? If that makes sense.
So on the general plan amendment, it is no.
Okay, so then Commissioner Munoz, hopefully you followed my convoluted logic. What's your answer?
So on the general plan amendment, it would be a no. I mean, I'm open to the idea of making amendments to the specific plan, but not in this format unless I have something before me that I can really dive in and see how everything else is going to be affected.
Okay, and Commissioner Powell, did I read you correctly in that you do not support a general plan amendment?
That's correct.
All right, so then Jason, the situation we have is that we have 4 of us who don't want to amend the general plan, which is a majority clearly. So we wouldn't be able to amend or modify the specific plan resolution. So that's where we are with that. And Andrew and Sarita, it seems to me that the next thing to do is simply entertain a motion on the general plan amendment.
Yes, Chair, if we could just go through, entertain motions and take votes on each of the individual entitlements requested, beginning with the general plan amendment.
Right, so at this time, may I have a motion to direct staff to prepare a resolution regarding the general plan amendment?
Make a motion. Andrew, do I just read it off in denial?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
I,
Michelle.
Commissioner Michelle Bernier, make a motion of denial of the planning of the project of City of La Habra, direct staff to deny resolution for commission consideration, clarifying and ratifying. How do I turn this?
Chair,
Read word for word.
Chair, if I might assist with the motion. Commissioner Bernier, are you perhaps trying to make a motion of the Planning Commission of the City of La Habra directing staff to prepare a resolution for commission consideration, recommending that the City Council deny General Plan Amendment 18-01?
Yes.
All right, very good. Thank you, Sarita. Is there a second?
I Commissioner Munoz, second the motion.
Very good, thank you. Secretary, please call roll.
This is Planning Commission Secretary Carmen. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Carmen.
Perfect. Calling roll. Commissioner Bernier,
No.
was that a yes, ma'am?
Yes. Yes, but.
Thank you. Commissioner Munoz,
Yes.
Commissioner Powell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Manley,
No.
Chair Nazarian.
Yes.
Motion has passed. This will be forwarded to the City Council for final consideration.
Thank you, Carmen. So as we all know, we have to run through 2 through 9 as well to create a record on this. So at this time, may I have a motion to direct staff to prepare a resolution regarding the final EIR?
Mr. Chairman, this is Jerry Powell. May I move this item?
Yes, please.
I'll second it.
Well, we have to read.
I have to read it. I think I have to read it first, yeah. Again, this is Commissioner Jerry Powell. I would move a motion of the Planning Commission of the City of La Habra directing staff to prepare a resolution for the commission's consideration certifying, not certifying I'm sorry, I can't read it on my.
Final EIR.
Final EIR and recommending that the city council also not certify that the final EIR and determine the project exempt based on the denial of the project.
It's hard to read blue writing, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm old, sorry.
No problem. Is there a second?
Second, Ms. Bernier.
Thank you. Will the secretary please call roll?
Commission Secretary Carmen. Calling roll. Commissioner Powell,
Yes.
Commissioner Bernier,
Yes.
Commissioner Munoz,
Yes.
Vice Chair Manley,
No.
Chair Nazarian.
Yes.
This item has passed. This action will be forwarded to the City Council for final consideration.
Thank you, Carmen. At this time, may I have a motion to direct staff to prepare a resolution regarding amendment number 3 of the La Habra Hills specific plan? Sarita, is there any objection to me making a motion?
No, Chair, you can certainly make the motion.
I'm jumping on it. This is Commissioner Exarian. I make a motion of the Planning Commission of the City of La Habra directing staff to prepare a resolution for commission consideration, recommending that the City Council deny amendment number 3 to the La Habra Hills specific plan. And is there a second?
Second, Jerry Powell.
Commissioner Powell, thank you. A motion has been made and seconded. Can we please call roll on that?
This is Commission Secretary Carmen. Calling roll. Chair Nazarian,
Yes.
Commissioner Powell,
Yes.
Commissioner Bernier,
Yes.
Commissioner Munoz,
Yes.
Vice Chair Manley.
Yes.
This item has passed. This action will be forwarded to the City Council for final consideration.
Thank you, Carmen. At this time, may I have a motion to direct staff to prepare a resolution regarding adoption of Rancho La Habra specific plan?
Chair Nazarian, I'll make a motion.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
This is Commissioner Munoz. I make the motion of the Planning Commission of the City of La Habra directing staff to prepare a resolution for the commission consideration, recommending that the City Council not adopt the Rancho La Habra specific plan.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Bernier seconds. Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, please call roll.
This is Commission Secretary Carmen calling roll. Commissioner Munoz,
Yes.
Commissioner Bernier,
Yes.
Commissioner Powell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Manley,
Yes.
Chair Nazarian.
Yes.
This item has passed, and this action will be forwarded to the City Council for final consideration.
Thank you, Carmen. At this time, may I have a motion to direct staff to prepare a resolution regarding zone change 18-01?
Bernier. I, Commissioner Bernier, make a motion of the Planning Commission of the City of La Habra directing staff to prepare a resolution for the Commissioner's consideration recommending that the council deny zone change 18-01.
A little bit more, another 2 lines.
Changing the zone from, I don't have it.
Well, see if you agree with this. Changing the zone from La Habra Hill specific plan to Rancho La Habra specific plan. Is that the rest of your motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I, Commissioner Munoz, second the motion.
Thank you. We have motion and a second. Can we please call roll?
This is Commission Secretary Carmen calling roll. Commissioner Bernier,
Yes.
Commissioner Munoz,
Yes.
Commissioner Powell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Manley,
Yes.
Chair Nazarian.
Yes.
This item has passed. This action will be forwarded to the City Council for final consideration.
Thank you, Carmen. At this time, may I have a motion to direct staff to prepare a resolution regarding the vesting tentative track map 17845? And I'll make the motion. This is Commissioner Exarian. I make a motion of the Planning Commission of the City of La Habra directing staff to prepare a resolution for commission consideration denying vesting tentative track map 17845. And I'll call for a second.
Second.
Commissioner Bernier is the second. Thank you. May we please call roll?
This is Commission Secretary Carmen calling roll. Chair Nazarian,
Yes.
Commissioner Bernier,
Yes.
Commissioner Powell,
Yes.
Commissioner Munoz,
Yes.
Vice Chair Manley.
Yes.
This item has passed. The motion will be forwarded to City Council.
Thanks, Carmen. At this time, may I have a motion to direct staff to prepare a resolution regarding design review 18-01 through 18-05 for Rancho La Habra specific plan areas 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7.
Mr. Chair, this is Jerry Powell. May I move this item?
Please do.
Commissioner Jerry Powell, I move that the Planning Commission of the City of La Habra to direct staff to prepare a resolution for the commission consideration recommending that the City Council deny design review 18-01 through 18-05 for Rancho La Habra specific plan areas 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7.
Thanks, Jerry. Is there a second?
I'll second. Commissioner Munoz.
Munoz, thank you very much. May we please call roll?
This is Commission Secretary Carmen calling roll. Commissioner Powell,
Yes.
Commissioner Munoz,
Yes.
Commissioner Bernier,
Yes.
Vice Chair Manley,
Yes.
Chair Nazarian.
Yes.
This item has passed. This action will be forwarded to the City Council for final consideration.
Thank you, Carmen. I'm just looking to see, is this the last one coming up? I think it is. So here we go. Last opportunity to make a motion. At this time, may I have a motion to direct staff to prepare a resolution regarding development agreement 18-01.
I'll make a motion. This is Commissioner Munoz. I make a motion of the Planning Commission of the City of La Habra directing staff to prepare a resolution for commission consideration recommending that the City Council deny development agreement 18-01.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Bernier provides the second. May we please call roll?
This is Commission Secretary Carmen calling roll. Commissioner Munoz,
Yes.
Commissioner Bernier,
Yes.
Commissioner Powell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Manley,
Yes.
Chair Nazarian.
Yes.
This motion has passed. This action will be forwarded to the City Council for final consideration.
The Chair,
Ladies and gentlemen.
make one correction in terms of Carmen's indication that the actions would be forwarded to the council for their final consideration. So as all of the motions directed staff to prepare resolutions to bring back to the Planning Commission, it will be at a later meeting date that the Planning Commission would then consider and adopt those resolutions that you have requested. And then at that point, your recommendations would be forwarded to the council.
Understood. Thank you for correcting the record. We appreciate it. All right. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Are there any consideration items tonight?
None, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any comments from staff?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the city staff here, wanted to express our appreciation for the time and effort that the commission has put forth on this Planning Commission agenda. Appreciate all of your hard work. I'd want to acknowledge our city staff here as well. We've had a lot of staff support over the last 3 days to get this meeting heard before the commission. So on behalf of the staff, appreciate the hard work and dedication that you've provided to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Now it's time for any comments from commissioners. We'll kick it off with Commissioner Bernier.
I just want to thank the community for coming out and, letting us know how they feel, even though some of it was in passion, we're all, it's been on all of our minds. We've all been living with this for 4 years. Our fellow commissioners, we've been really going through all of this intently, for the past few months and weeks, really, really intently. So I appreciate it. I hope I see more of you guys at our future projects we have. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you to all my commissioners. I really appreciate you guys. I appreciate all your words, everything that you guys all said. I'm really glad to hear so much conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Commissioner Powell, any final words?
No comments.
No comment. Thank you. Commissioner Munoz?
I just want to echo what Michelle said. I want to thank the community for being very engaged and very passionate. I hope that this type of engagement transcends into our housing element. I just want to urge everyone that the housing element is coming. So we definitely have to be realistic in where we're going to put these additional densities throughout the city and work collaboratively and getting more solutions to mitigate our housing crisis in the state of California. And with that said, I want to urge everyone here in La Habra to fill out your census. The census has been extended. This is free monies that we would get just by simply spending 10 minutes of your time, making sure that we're all represented. This is direct monies that we get from the federal, state, regional, and local. So we definitely need to be represented. This is one way of combating and getting additional funds for the city of La Habra. That's it.
Well said, Manny. Thank you, especially with regard to the census. You're right. It's vitally important. Vice Chair Manley?
No comments from me. Thank you, Chair.
All right. Well, guys, we probably spent 100 hours in preparation for this project. To say that we were duly diligent is a vast understatement. I can attest, knowing all of you the way that I do, just how much tortuous thought and effort you put into this with those 3 volumes of EIR, getting questions answered by staff. Nobody did prejudge this until we began this public hearing. I know that. I know I felt that way myself. So we understood the absolute fundamental responsibility that we undertook to wait and consider everything that comes before us. And what we saw here too, I think Andrew mentioned this to me, it was such a tremendous exercise in representational democracy. The way we worked so hard to make sure that all viewpoints were included, and the fact that we did our homework so thoroughly and that we were not swayed by anything. We were swayed, of course, you go back and forth in your own mind, but you don't decide until all the facts are in. And I think that's exactly what we did. And it's nice to see the end of the road finally reached. I'll say that though. I want to say tremendous thanks to all the staff. I want to thank Veronica, who worked so hard every night. It was so difficult working those phones, so to speak. She was like the old-fashioned switchboard. I know it was stressful for her, and I want to tell her how much we appreciate her. Carmen, it's hard. It was hard for you too. I mean, it's difficult to do the secretary's job remotely. We appreciate you very much. Thank you. Roy, you gave a great presentation. I know how much work you put into this. This was your report. You were the lead on this, and I respect you tremendously, and I'm so grateful for all your hard work. Andrew, what can I say? Andrew didn't seem stressed at all. He was the coolest cucumber in the room always, and yet that he was always thinking 5 chess moves ahead. He had every base covered. He was an enormous resource to me. It would have been 10 times harder for me to get through chairing this hearing without Andrew. So Andrew, profound thanks to you. And also our counselors, Janetta, David, Sarita, especially tonight with all of your insight.
Really?
You. Who is that? Anyway, Monica. Anyway, and all the staff too. I didn't mention everybody, but I know all the other staff played big roles in this too. So thank you to you all. And that's it. Now we're on to the next project. So thank you, everybody. I have to mention, we are now, with no further business before us, adjourned to Thursday, September 17th at 6:00 p.m. via Zoom.
So that's, Chair Nazarian, that's something I wanted to bring to the commission's attention. In light of the recommendation tonight, we think we can turn around the resolutions by tomorrow. If the commissioners' schedules are available for tomorrow, we would prefer that the agenda, the meeting be adjourned to the meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. if everybody is available for that.
Anybody who suddenly has any objections to that, please interject right now.
Did you say 6 p.m. or 6:30?
6 p.m., sorry, 6 o'clock p.m.
6, not 6:30.
Not
Yeah,
6:30.
I'm recommending 6 p.m. just to get started a little bit earlier. I know some folks may have time constraints.
That's not going to be very easy for me at all. If we can move it to next week, that'd be a whole lot easier for me.
Can you, okay, that, and we can probably do that, but would 6:30 be any easier?
Yeah, just not tomorrow. We have, my husband has class tomorrow and we won't be able to do both. So we can't do that.
Okay, yeah, that's, what do you say, Andrew? What would you like to do then?
Hey, Chair Nazarian and Andrew, how long would you expect the meeting tomorrow to be? Is that pretty brief?
Yeah, to present the resolutions to the commission and to do the vote, I'm anticipating maybe 15 minutes. And maybe a question for Sarita. Would the resolutions be placed on consent, or would we still need to officially do votes? We would have to do official votes on all of them again. Probably.
Yes.
Yeah, so we would bring it back.
Especially since we're doing a remote
Okay.
meeting.
We would
Long
put it
as it
back on
doesn't-
consideration.
As long as it doesn't take longer than a half an hour, I think we can kind of swing it.
I think that's what I'm kind of hearing. I think it would probably be about 15-20 minutes at most. Is that right, Andrew, you think?
Yes.
That'd be great for me as well. Michelle, I also have something tomorrow night. 6 o'clock would work better for me if the rest of the commission is good with that.
As long as we have a window, we can create it.
Okay, so Michelle, it's okay with you if it's going to be short like that, 15, 20 minutes, if we do it at 6 o'clock?
Yeah, we can figure it out.
Okay. All right, okay. Are any other objections to 6 o'clock for that 15, 20 minutes? Hearing none, I think we're good.
Thanks, everybody.
Right, Andrew?
Yep, thank you.
All right, so until that time, we are adjourned. Thank you again. Everybody have a great night.